comfort zone, 'cause I need more of the truth right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a final. You got me on tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high. I won't be turning around, no, I won't be turning around. 'Cause the right time, you feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I will win tonight. Don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it. We'll turn this around. Don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it. We'll turn this around.
Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some race reaction for the 2021 Dutch Grand Prix. Breaking news, we got a race. That'll do. It's better than last week. A couple of people in chat saying it was boring. Go back and watch Belgium and then come back and tell me that was boring. Good Lord. I thought that was all right. Obviously just me, but there you go. I thought that was all right. I'm going to be joined by Dan shortly to waffle away for the next... I schedule an hour and a half. We're usually about 2 hours, aren't we? So, yeah, for the next 2 hours, waffle away about that one. We'll talk about all the good stuff that went on in that one. I think some good strategy intrigue. I think that phrase is going to come quite a bit, but let's kick things off by having a look at the race results. Max Verstappen taking the win. Lewis Hamilton in second with Valtteri Bottas third and Pierre Gasly fourth. That was the top four yesterday. Was it the top five with Leclerc as well? But, Leclerc fifth. But there was a lot more to it than just a procession, really, if you like your strategy. Sixth place, Fernando Alonso. What a race he had, by the way. Seventh for Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez up in eighth place. Good recovery from yesterday, but we'll get on to him in a minute. Esteban Ocon ninth. Lando Norris 10th. Danny Rick in 11th. And then we've got Stroll in 12th. Sebastian Vettel 13th. Antonio Giovinazzi 14th. Robert Kubica, can we just take a moment just to appreciate what he achieved this weekend? All right, he made a stop less than his teammate and all of that business, but I still think that's a really good result from Robert Kubica ahead of both the Williams. Latifi 16th, Russell 17th, who had that penalty, of course. Mick Schumacher 18th, and then DNFs for Yuki Tsunoda and Nikita Mazepin. So I'm going to hop into the chat and say a very good afternoon to Dan. Are you feeling a little bit better than you did this time last Sunday, mate?
That's an understatement. To start the stream, that was so much better. Just the fact we didn't have to wait for 4 hours, dude. That is infinitely better than last weekend. Not a bad race, I feel.
No, it was like I say, if I'm being honest, there was probably around 100% more overtaking than I thought we were going to see. So I'm not going to complain too much about the lack of overtaking in air quotes, because we did see a fair bit more than I expected. But it was one of those that really was about strategy, who could do what on the tyres. But I've got to say, we've got to start at the front, haven't we, really? Verstappen and Hamilton. I was thinking this while I was watching the race. I must say this to Dan as soon as he comes on. When Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are flat out giving it everything, going toe-to-toe at the front, nobody can touch them. They are absolutely incredible, the pair of them. They're in a league of their own today. Hamilton did, of course, make that late pit stop for fastest lap, 20 seconds behind. Valtteri Bottas also made a late pit stop, 56 seconds behind. But even prior to Bottas' stop, he wasn't really there, was he, on the pace? So stunning drive from both drivers, but Verstappen just untouchable today.
Definitely. And I think that's kind of where my thoughts are, that this race wasn't that bad. I think if you're going to have a Grand Prix and come to a circuit like Zandvoort and expect it to be a bit of a snooze fest, if you're going to ask for anything, you want to fight for the victory. And we definitely had that today. And I was coming into this race thinking Max has got a great chance to win. Yesterday sticks it on pole, but Lewis put in an awesome final sector to be less than a 10th. And already that set up the race to be a bit of a thriller. Lap one, turn one, not as exciting as I think a lot of people would have been expecting. But the fact that Lewis was able to keep Max honest, the fact that the pressure Max was having to have all weekend long, yes, it's brilliant having your home crowd there, but that must have been insane. That must have been just unimaginable how much everyone was hoping he would win, putting that, like I said, that pressure on, the expectation to win, and having a 7-time world champion right behind you. And also, I think what was one of the most important parts of today's race was the fact that there were two Mercedes at the front. I know Valtteri wasn't in the race for victory today, but having the option to do the two separate strategies, forcing Red Bull to commit to the two-stop, forcing Max to overtake Bottas at one stage of the race, really set things up to be pretty awesome. And you're right, the both of them just in a league of their own. Doesn't matter if it's Russell in that Mercedes car next year. It doesn't matter who you put in that Red Bull car. I think you're always going to have Hamilton and Verstappen be the two lead drivers in those two teams. And get right from the go today, just gone. Max made a bit of a gap over Lewis. Valtteri, who was almost there in those opening stages, also just vanished. Valtteri, that is. I don't know if I just said Max twice. Apologies if I be getting carried away there. But either way, both of them, like you say, man, league of their own. And Lewis made him work for it today, which what I certainly wasn't expecting heading into it.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments, weren't there, where it looked like Hamilton was coming back at him, but then it sort of gap came down to 1.4 and you thought, oh, here we go. We've got a battle, and then the camera picks up Verstappen and he's stuck behind a Haas or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, it's traffic, and then that gap was increased. I got the overwhelming impression today that although both of them were pushing hard, I think certainly towards the end of that second stint, or third stint really, wasn't it, after the second round of pit stops, Verstappen was keeping something in hand on those tyres. I don't know why. It may just be the fact the gap kept coming down and extending and coming down and extending. I don't know, but I think he had it under control today. I must admit though, strategy wise, Mercedes were weird today. I think they were right to go for the two-stop. But there was a moment with probably 10 or 12 laps to go where Hamilton was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess pushy on the team radio about wanting to go racing. And I did wonder, and maybe it's just me, let me know what you think, chat. I'm sure you'll tell me what you think, Dan. That's the point of these. But I wondered why they didn't pull him in a little bit earlier. Sure, he would have fallen behind Bottas, but that's not a problem. You can move him out of the way and try and do what we saw at Hungary a couple of years ago, where he went onto a set of fresher tyres later and closed the gap down to take the fight to him, and what we saw happen in Spain again, Hungary. Was it this year, Hungary, or no, year before? You know what I'm talking about, the late stop, chase him down. I'm surprised I didn't go with that with sort of 10 or 12 laps to go with those soft tyres, and I kind of feel, don't know if you agree, Dan, but I kind of feel like that's what Hamilton seemed to be pushing for on the radio a little bit. Try something different.
I'm with you on this. I'm very much in the camp that at least give it a go, give it a try, because on that very final lap, when Hamilton came in and eventually put on the softs and got the fastest lap, he was 4 seconds quicker than Max on that final lap of the race. And when you're at a stage of the Grand Prix, 10 laps to go, the only real chance of victory is Verstappen making a mistake or having an issue, at least try something. I think you're right. I think they had the opportunity to pull Bottas out the way, or even like they eventually did, just bring in both of them. Why not? I'm sure there'll be some people that will say, look, there's always a chance a pit stop could go wrong. Yeah, that's right. They had the potential there of throwing away a second place, a third place, but at least give it a go. When a championship's on the line like this, when they had such a buffer over Gasly and the Ferraris and the rest of the midfield, why not? I suppose the only other thing that maybe Mercedes were looking at was traffic, because from the track map for most of the race, there was that huge train in the midfield. You had your Alonso's, your Ocons, Sainz, Perez, not all in the same place. So maybe they were worried about that coming into play with 10 laps to go. I'm not sure, because blue flags, I think for everyone today at the front, was a bit of a nightmare. But I'm with you. I think it was definitely worth a shot. Even if it didn't pay off, they would at least know, rather than just settling for second, which I suppose we're not used to Mercedes doing.
I get that argument about traffic, but at the same time, after his second stop, they did stick him out in traffic.
Very true. Yeah.
I agree. You know, you bring him in, a wheel nut sticks, it stops, or doesn't even come off like Monaco. The wheel stays on the car, and he's got a 42-hour pit stop or whatever it was for Bottas. I get that argument, but at the same time, tight championship fight. Is it worth that gamble? I don't know. Probably just me. But I'm not a strategist, and that's why. Because if I was, I'll tell you what, it's a really crap comparison, okay? But when I'm on the F1 game, everyone else will pit once, I'll pit 3 times because I'm so bad on tyres. So I'd be a terrible strategist. So lower the difficulty, get it down to 10% and still win the race, you know. But, that's not my job. They've got more intelligent people than me working that one out. But I just wonder if it was worth that gamble. And I know that, they had second and third in the bag, didn't they? Let's be honest about that. They had it in the bag. Bottas could have easily been moved out of the way if needs be. So it just seemed odd they didn't try it. But if they also don't think they've got the pace on that soft tyre, which they didn't seem to have in that first stint, then it's not worth the gamble, is it? You might as well just consolidate and take second and third place and on to Monza. But a bit of a kerfuffle towards the end with the whole fastest lap thing. I'll come to you in a minute, Lee. Thank you very much for that contribution, mate. You legend. I will come to you in just a second. But just want to talk about the team orders thing. It set Sky off with that, quite clearly George Russell's got that seat now, because that confirms contracts apparently. But Bottas called in, told not to go for fastest lap. Hamilton comes in, goes for fastest lap. Bottas pumps in a couple of purple sectors, still sets the fastest lap, but backs off in the final sector. He was right to question that. I think if I'm a driver on a fresh set of tyres, Jenson Button said as much on the Sky coverage, you want to get out there on those fresh tyres, you want to pump in a quali style lap. Bottas wanted to do that, but from a driver's championship perspective and a constructors championship perspective, for the team, it doesn't matter which driver it goes to. It's 1 point. For the drivers' championship, they had to make sure it went to Hamilton today, and I think that is damage limitation, really. But I think if ever there was any doubt that Valtteri Bottas was a number 2 driver for the rest of this season, that's all been sorted today. He is a number 2 driver at Mercedes until at least the end of the year, possibly into next year, if he keeps that seat, which he probably won't.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that one. I'm still questioning the need to even try or attempt the fastest lap, because Lewis had it anyway. So by bringing in Valtteri to do it, of course he's going to ask who has it, because most likely he's not quite sure who even has fastest lap at that stage. So I understand that. The whole kerfuffle with backing off, last sector still got fastest lap. It's amusing. I don't want to read into it too much because Lewis knew he had it on the last lap. But like we were just saying, why didn't they try it 10 laps earlier? Because I feel the only other risk, well, I suppose then Max could have come in as well, but why not leave it? Because it's not as if Checo was going to come and try the fastest lap when he was in his own little race to get from not even 10th at that stage, wasn't it? Through to 8th place. He had his own focus, and I feel Red Bull just needed those more points in the midfield from Checo. So I to be honest, mate, I don't quite understand why they decided to pull the plug that late on.
No idea.
Cool.
Like I say, I'm not a strategist. It's great that we have these conversations. Don't know, mate. Whatever. I'll just do these super chats quickly. Thank you so much again to Lee for that incredibly generous contribution. Says Maximilian Pegasus. Thank you very much, mate. That is incredibly generous. I always feel like a thank you isn't enough. If we could get to 500 likes for Lee, that would be fantastic. We're at 101 at the moment, 939 watching. So if we can get to 500 for Lee, a like per dollar, that would be absolutely awesome. So please do smash a like right now if you could. Right now, do it, or there's going to be trouble. That was a lot more aggressive than I wanted it to be. But anyway, and thank you to Field as well. Says, atmosphere was electric. The onboard's incredible. Made the race awesome, but I worry it's just because it is the first one. Do you worry Zandvoort will get boring over time? Thank you very much for your contribution as well, mate. Massively appreciated. I'm just trying to read a deleted message that keeps scrolling away. Talking about the race, but don't even know what you were talking about. The race. You answered it in your own comment, mate. But anyway, please don't spam because it just gives the mods a headache and Annette gets angry. Just super quickly. I mean, the atmosphere was incredible, wasn't it, Dan? And absolutely capped by pole position yesterday for Verstappen, the win today for Verstappen, the noise. I could hear it from here because I had headphones on. But it was so brilliant all weekend. And I think that if there was a way to have Silverstone, Zandvoort and Monza together on the calendar as a 3, I mean, that would be bloody epic, wouldn't it? What an atmosphere, what a race. Do you worry, just to answer Phil's question, that it might get boring and that we only got an all right one because it was the first one? Or do you think, because the drivers love the track, don't they? And it was great to watch the cars around there.
For me, it's one of the most exciting tracks to watch. And normally I don't even care about that. I'm someone that defends Paul Ricard and Abu Dhabi. So, normally I'm not that fussed about seeing cars driving around without racing. But on this one, it looked great. I think it's such a great venue to come to from a spectacle side of things. I think they really made a focus of making it an event, which I think is a little bit different to most races. But does Monza ever get boring with the Tifosi? No. So that side of things is never going to get dull. And I think the racing itself, F3 was okay. F1 today was okay. I'm just holding out for next year's cars. I say it about so many tracks. Monaco, you can add to the list, a bit of a stinker that I'm hoping next year will be better. And I think this one will be a similar kind of story. So I'm not worried just yet. And hey, Paul Ricard was great this year. And from all cases, it definitely shouldn't have been. So I'm not that worried.
I think the jury's out on every single Grand Prix next year because of the cars. We don't know, do we? We don't know. So thank you very much again for your super chats there. A bit more on Verstappen. I feel like we need to talk more about Verstappen, but it was one of those really brilliantly controlled races. I've said untouchable. I'll say it again. That's how it felt today. Always felt like he was in control of that one. Strategy. I think comms were right. He did what he had to do today. Hamilton pits, Verstappen pits. It was you don't need to be risking any let's run a little bit longer or let's come in a little bit earlier. They did the right thing today. And crucial move on Bottas actually at one point in that race, wasn't there, where Bottas had got ahead through the stops when it looked like he was going for one and Verstappen had to make the move. To be fair to Valtteri, did a great job as the team, as the wingman, I guess you could say today. But crucial move on Bottas when he needed to, got through the traffic when he needed to. Would you argue the perfect race from Verstappen?
Can I be really pedantic and say no?
Oh,
because he had
God.
that tiny lockup in the middle of the race.
Oh, my God. Oh, no. Max, take his win away.
Awful, horrendous. I was going to say, to be honest, he kind of made it look easy. With all that pressure from Hamilton, the two Mercedes, I mentioned it earlier, I really think when you've got that many fans there all supporting you for a race that the only reason they're going there is for Max Verstappen to soak that all up, a championship fight as well. I think that's so impressive. Yeah, I'm happy to say I think he made it look easy today, because I don't think many people were thinking anyone else would win at any stage of the race, really.
Jamie in chat says, "Oh God, Dan, wow, that is really pedantic, mate. That's clutching. Like, oh, he did fart halfway around turn 3.
Did he get a grand slam? No, technically not.
Well, suppose in that respect, no, it's not a perfect race. But what more could have got a grand slam? What more could he have done? You know what I'm saying? I think absolutely fantastic. Thank you as well to Charles Edward Cheese. Good evening, mate. Good to see you. Thank you for that incredibly generous contribution. Says Mercedes constructor and Max driver champion. When's the last time it's been split? Does Perez belong in the bin too? We're going to talk about Perez in just a second. Thank you very much, mate. Massively appreciate that. It's a good question. When was the last time it was split? Would that have been 2008? Hamilton drivers champion, Ferrari constructors.
Possibly.
9 was Brawn and Button. 10, 11, 12 and 13 were Red Bull and Vettel. And then it's been Mercedes ever since, hasn't it? So it must be 2008.
Wow.
That's a long time ago, isn't it? Christ, yeah. Wow. Thank you, Charles. You've thrown me off there. Let's answer his other question and talk about, just been confirmed in chat there from Marion17 says 2008 Hamilton and Ferrari. So let's talk about Perez while we're talking about sort of the top 2 teams. He got driver of the day today, and we will do driver of the day later, but I'm going to say now I actually disagree with that. It's not quite as pedantic as Dan's, but shocking day yesterday. I'm very harsh on these things, but I don't like the word unlucky. He wasn't unlucky. It was a miscalculation by the team. He could have got round to do his lap if he got on with it. I know there was traffic, but you can't say that's unlucky. It was just a miscalculation. But unfortunate to miss the line in qualifying. And then early in the race, starts on a hard tyre. They take the new engine. They take the new components. Great decision from Red Bull to avoid a big penalty at another track. You might as well take it while you're back towards the back end of the grid. Hard tyres, running long. Massive lockup, crazy flat spot, huge vibrations. He has to pit. He got 8th place today, and that is a good recovery from yesterday. But when you take into account the fact that he had that lockup, where would he have been if he'd done the one stop, which I assume is what they were going for? He could have been up there with the Leclercs and the Alonsos, maybe even higher. So I get why people have given him driver of the day, because he got all the overtakes done. He did make some brilliant overtakes, but I think that's a little generous given that he made the mistake and probably would have been higher. But I mean, if I'm not being harsh, you might completely disagree, Dan, and go, come on, Shaw, stop being horrible. But I mean, 8th place is still a good recovery from where he was on a track where apparently you can't overtake.
Yeah. I mean, normally I disagree with you with these kind of things, but I do actually agree on this one. I think Checo, like you mentioned, could have had a much better result today. When you look at Lando Norris, where he started, was it 13th? I think it was 13th, wasn't it? Finishing P10, almost P9, had that bit of a ding-dong with Checo near the end of the race, didn't they? Which 100% was a racing incident. Those two very much pushing their limits and just about getting away with it. But without that lockup, fighting, was it Nikita Mazepin? It was, wasn't it? It was either Mazepin or Latifi. I feel it was Mazepin.
I think it was a Haas, yeah.
Yeah, either way, Akari should have got past at least, I'm more than happy to say. I just think it's a little bit sloppy, a little bit silly when you know that by starting on the hard tyre, he had a great chance of doing that overgut strategy I love. But also at that stage of the race, you're kind of banking on a safety car. And that could, in theory, moved him not only way up the grid, but at least in contention for helping out Verstappen. By having to do that stop so early on, done. That's him nowhere near that fight for the front, or at least holding up a Bottas, holding up a Hamilton. And that could have been costly for Red Bull today. No matter what Verstappen did at the front, having 2 Mercedes against you is always going to be difficult. You are right, though. The recovery from Perez was pretty good after that. So I will cut him some slack. Getting points after that terrible start, after starting from pit lane, is great. But I just think he kicked himself in the teeth at the start of the race. And I can't shake that feeling today. And just like you, I think driver of the day is nice. He definitely made the best overtakes. He definitely made the most overtakes. But was he the best driver today? I'm not too sure.
I mean, it depends on how you vote on driver of the day. Keira in chat makes a fantastic point. Says, I personally award driver of the day to the one who made the race the most exciting, and seeing him make the comeback was good. So that's a fair point. If you're voting on driver of the day based on who makes the race exciting, then you probably would go for Perez, possibly Fernando Alonso. We'll talk about him shortly. But just in terms of who was the best driver today, I would argue in the fastest car, you'd expect him to come through anyway, even if it is difficult to overtake. I'm trying not to take too much away from him, but also the fact that he had that massive lockup, I think that was pretty costly today. Be interesting to see. I'd like to know where it would have come. A few people in chat said around 5th, 6th place, so I think that's probably where we'd be looking. I mean, Gasly was gone today, but yeah, I think Checo, he's always raced better than he's qualified. I was talking about this to Jonty last night in DMs on Twitter. We both kind of say, you know, the things I think Jonty said the things he's done on tyres. It'd be really fascinating to see how many points he's won because of his tyre management through his career, because he's very good in a race, and we saw that today. But he needs to get those Saturdays right, because if he's up there in even 4th place today, even 5th, screw it, even 5th place, he can play a part for Red Bull and remove that risk that, like you said, Dan, remove that risk that comes with having 2 Mercedes in competition with 1 Red Bull, which is what he's there to do. So he's had a rough run of races, not all his fault. It's got to be said, you know. Yes, he had that sloppy weekend in at the Red Bull ring where he was either being run off track or running people off track. His Silverstone spin wasn't great, and he was sacrificing the race to go for fastest lap. Hungary, not his fault at all. He was just wiped out in turn 1. So could do with hitting a run of form now, Checo. And now his contract's sorted. Hopefully he will be able to do that. Got to talk about the Norris incident. I mean, some great moves from him, particularly around the outside of that first corner. We saw a lot of overtaking today, which looks incredible, by the way. When cars overtake through turn 1, it looks great around the outside of Tarzan. But the incident with Norris, I think that's 2 drivers fighting hard right towards the end of the race for some extra points, and contact was inevitable. I don't even think it was investigated. I don't think it should have been investigated, but it was, you might argue it was borderline, but I'd say hard, very, very, very hard, but fair.
I think so. When neither car was particularly damaged, both of them kept on going, both of them scored points. I think even if one of them had retired from that contact, it was such a little bit of contact. Both of them had a little bit more room to give. It's borderline. It's hard. It's aggressive racing. But at the end of the day, that's what we want to see. Neither of them deliberately slammed into each other. Both had more room to give. I think that's a slam dunk racing incident.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair whack of damage to Checo's floor by the look of it, and it could have been a lot worse because it was the second contact, wasn't it? That was quite the wallop. So I'm surprised there wasn't a little bit of damage, and maybe 15 years ago there would have been. But these cars are quite strong, aren't they? Particularly, I think rear suspension tends to be quite robust. Again, we're not going to get too technical, Dan. Don't panic.
Thank goodness.
All in all, though, I mean, it's points for Checo. It's a win for Verstappen. It's, you know, the Constructors' Championship still open. The Drivers' Championship has swung back Max Verstappen's way. I think Red Bull overall this weekend will be happy, but they do need Checo to be up there for sure. And it just feels like the right time to answer this because we've done the top 2 teams. Justin, thank you for your contribution. Your super chat says, what did you think of singing the national anthem in the podium ceremony? I think that was all right. I quite like that. I prefer it to the... I was going to say the taped in version, like there's somebody backstage with a cassette tape and a cassette player. I think things have moved on from the 90s. But I actually quite like the idea of singing the national anthem at the end rather than just playing it over a streaming service, a CD, a record player. I don't know what they use, Dan.
I don't know what they use either. But what I will say, I'm with you. I liked it. I didn't think it was... I'm cool with it. My only thing is that I'm not sure if she had all the songs in her locker.
That's a good point.
I don't know if she knows every single one of them off by heart, because if she does, fair play. But I've got a sneaky suspicion if Max didn't win today, that wouldn't have happened.
Probably right. I mean, could you imagine if Kubica, when a chaotic race and Kubica had won, and she'd gone Polish national anthem, please, and she's just sort of stood there like, oh no, and then just breaks out Backstreet's Back or something because she's not sure. That'll do. A bit of Adele, you know. Yeah, no, I thought it was good. It was a nice addition the whole weekend. Even just watching on TV, I don't know about you, mate, but I am desperate to get to Zandvoort next year. It's on my list. The atmosphere was just remarkable, and I think possibly the best atmosphere I've seen at a Grand Prix on TV, obviously, since maybe Leclerc's win at Monza in 2019. But before that, probably looking at Alonso Spain, Schumacher Germany kind of levels, if not even bigger. So Jan Lammers, everybody who's put that event together, huge kudos to them. Fantastic weekend. But let's talk about drivers, Dan. We're not here to talk about Jan Lammers. He is a driver, or an ex-driver. But Pierre Gasly, 4th place today. Kind of flew a little bit under the radar. A fair way off the leaders, to be fair, in a bit of a race of his own. Just absolutely superb. Absolutely. There's not a lot to say about his race because he was just in a race on his own, wasn't he, for the most part? Really good defending at the start to stop the Ferraris getting through. Drove really, really well. I'd maybe even argue a shout for driver of the day as well. I think just another tick in the box of Pierre Gasly if Red Bull do ever decide at the end of next season to make a change. I don't think there's much more that lad can do, to be honest.
All in an AlphaTauri as well. I mean, that's the biggest thing that baffles me. We know this season, last season, and half of the season before, we know how consistent this guy can be. We know how quick he can be on a Saturday. And that record of, is it just 3 or 4 races he's not started in the top 6? What? In an AlphaTauri? He's just been that good on a Saturday. And apart from Bahrain and also Silverstone, where he had a puncher, he's converted it to points every other race. That's nuts when you think you've got McLaren and Ferrari deep in this battle for the 3rd place in the constructors. You've got Mercedes and Red Bull. In theory, that only leaves 9th and 10th place. So for Gasly to be able, like today, it's not his best result on paper. He did get that podium in Baku, but I would argue this is his best result all season long. To be able to beat every other car apart from the top 3 on a circuit, yes, it's difficult to overtake, but on a circuit where I don't think AlphaTauri were coming into this race expecting 4th place. I think they would have assumed Ferrari, who looked quick on Saturday and Friday, I think they would have thought they would have been behind them, maybe even behind the Alpines. 4th place, and a comfortable 4th place at that. I really don't think you can ask for much more. And like you say, I don't want to get speculative too much, although I know we both absolutely love doing that. I'm still not convinced that next year the door is closed at Red Bull. And I think if he continues to do races like this, qualifying like this, they've got to at least consider him.
I agree he should be considered, but he's never going back to Red Bull. The only chance he's got of ever getting in that Red Bull is if Max Verstappen decides to leave Red Bull for whatever reason, because they don't want him. For whatever reason, Helmut Marko does not want him in that car. But if Verstappen was to turn around and say, do you know what? I'm retiring at 24, because that's highly likely, of course. That's sarcasm for anyone who's not sure. Retiring at 24, very unlikely. But if he decides to disappear, Red Bull would probably have to look at, as things stand, Gasly or Tsunoda, and then they might take Gasly. But I wouldn't even be surprised if they go look at trying to sign a Norris or somebody like that. I don't think they want him there. So there you go. The point I'm making, though, is that he just can't do any more, can he? If that's what he's doing in AlphaTauri and Red Bull still won't take him, then as soon as that contract's up, Pierre, get yourself somewhere else. I'm really surprised Williams aren't looking at him. I really am. I'm not going to get into silly season. Charles Leclerc, another one who I didn't really see an awful lot of today, if I'm being honest, but obviously drove well. 5th place, some really good and important points for Ferrari as well. That's moved them back up into 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. So a big result for them today over McLaren, with Carlos Sainz's 7th as well, just losing out to Alonso towards the end. But Leclerc drove well. I think Sainz will probably be very disappointed he lost out late on to Alonso, but I think that little trio, Leclerc, Alonso and Sainz, were another 3 who had a really strong race today. And I think Alonso really flew under the radar with fans in that driver of the day vote. I think he was another one that made the race entertaining. Some close calls at the start with his teammate, of course, but I think a great drive from them 3. And like I say, big important points for Ferrari.
Yeah, that's the big thing Ferrari can take from today. They were nowhere near Gasly, really. I know Leclerc and Sainz as well, to be fair, both went a little bit longer on their strategy, didn't they? And went on to I think it was the hard tyre, and Gasly was on the medium. And there was a stage where it looked like Leclerc may be able to catch Gasly, but eventually those tyres worn off. And that has been Ferrari's really Achilles heel this year, is tyre degradation. So to come away with 2 cars in the points, probably a little bit frustrated that Alonso nicked Sainz at the end, but for both cars to be in the point to McLaren just to get 1, they'll be really happy with that. And for Leclerc, he's only 16 points behind Perez now. So I just wonder, this bit of momentum that's there, if he can keep his nose clean, which for Leclerc isn't always possible, if he can do that, I don't think he's out of the running for top 3 at a push. At a push. But either way, his season going under the radar of being a really, really strong one in that average Ferrari car. And like you say, Alonso keeping things nice and spicy in that midfield today. I do think Alpine could have scored some more points. I think Ocon in those early stages was the quicker of the two. And I do wonder if they'd have just let Esteban go, let him go in front of Fernando. I think Esteban could have been, well, fighting for these 5th and 6th places, if I'm honest. However, Fernando defended well. There was that move from Esteban into turn 3 that got a little bit close. And as you mentioned, turn 2, a little kiss between the two of them. And also Giovinazzi went steaming into the back of Alonso as well on the opening lap. So to escape any damage, to hold on and to score points, again, stealing that couple more points from Sainz in the closing laps as well. Yeah, a really strong drive. I'm like you. I think Alonso has gone under the radar on driver of the day again today. But I do think Alpine could have done better if they'd have swapped the two cars around.
That's interesting, because I thought that watching it, but then, as was pointed out, when you look at when Karun Chandok was coming on with his analysis during the race, every time that Ocon was saying he was quicker, Alonso would pull out 2 or 3 seconds or something like that. So I wonder if he was looking after tyres a little bit. I've not caught his post-race interview, actually, Fernando. I caught a few of the other ones. Lando Norris in hysterics. I'm sure that'll go up at some point. But yeah, I think... Alonso was 28.6 behind Leclerc over the line. So even if they swapped, do you think Ocon could have taken that fight to Leclerc? I see you made the statement. I'm going to come at you now.
That's fine. I think he could have, only because I think there were 2 chances to do it. I think in those opening stages when Ocon made that move at turn 3, he was clearly the quicker of the two. That'll be snipped up that one. Clearly the quicker of the two at that stage of the race. And also Alonso had that damage from the opening lap. So I feel they wouldn't have quite known if he was carrying. Maybe they would have from the telemetry, but I'm not sure if he was fully at his full potential there with that car. And I think then again, when they both came in for their first stops, Ocon again seemed the quicker of the two at the start of the phase. And in a race like this, where overtaking is so difficult, where the gaps were so big, I just feel it was worth a try. And I do think Ocon could have been a lot higher. And I also think he could have been safe from Perez, which he eventually wasn't.
Interesting. Like, genuinely intrigued. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if I agree or not.
I mean, like we said earlier, guys are paid money to do this, so I'm sure they know more than me, and I'm sure they would have been looking at gaps and, like you mentioned, looking at what tyres they both have available and making sure that they don't lose out, swapping the two cars. So I understand why eventually they didn't, but I just think it would have been worth the gamble.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, probably would have been in and around there anyway, but yeah, I mean... There was that little tap at the start between them, as you say. Bit of contact, nice and feisty early on. They've got a good relationship. So I think if the team had come over and said to Fernando, hop out the way, mate, then he'd probably been fine doing that. But he didn't need to. He kept pulling away, like I say. So I don't know. I might keep an eye out for the quotes on that one. So it'll be interesting what Fernando has to say, whether he was looking after tyres. Because he did a one-stopper, didn't he? So did Ocon. So they had to do quite a fair bit of tyre management to get them to the end. So that's an intriguing... Yeah, I'm going to go back and watch the race now. Because you said that, Dan. But like, oh yeah, that's a good point, actually. Well said, Dan. Like I said, Carlos Sainz, disappointed probably to miss out on that 6th place towards the end, but Fernando was coming through on those mediums, no doubt about that. I think Alonso, Perez, I'm sure there's a couple of others that you might mention as well, Dan. They really gave us some good action today with overtaking, didn't they? And maybe another one of those races where experience was important. I don't know, but Alonso actually has never raced at this track before. That's his first appearance at Zandvoort, and he got 6th place, wow. So that's not bad, is it?
Yeah, it didn't look like it. he wasn't driving like it. I'd also throw in Latifi as well at the start of the race. He was putting in some cracking moves.
Yeah. I think there are a few. I think there are a few out there that did. Like I said at the start, I thought we'd see no overtaking today, and I think we saw a fair amount. We're not talking the levels that some tracks like Bahrain might give us because the DRS zones weren't quite long enough. Although I must say that DRS zone down the straight, the start-finish straight, they were talking about extending that into the banking over the weekend. I actually think that was about the right length. You would get close enough. Maybe it could be a little bit longer, I don't know, but you get close enough, and then you've got to work for that move around the outside of turn one. That's what, as Martin Brundle keeps saying, that's the point of DRS. DRS isn't there to help you breeze past the car in front. It's there to help you get alongside, and I think it's maybe a little bit longer would have helped that, but I think for the most part, it gave us what it was supposed to do, DRS. I think places like Bahrain, it's too easy. I try to think of another track.
Monza?
Monza. It's just too easy. It's too long. And so you're breezing past halfway down the straight, whereas at Zandvoort you've got to work for it into turn one, and that's sort of the point. So yeah, I think some good action there. We've talked about Perez, haven't we? We've sort of talked about Ocon. I keep looking through my notes because I've made notes, but it's mostly pit stops, and I don't think you want me to sit here and read you all the pit stops because that, for the most part, is what we really were talking about. But Ocon, like I said, that contact with Alonso, no damage there. Was it Ocon that Gio went into the back of, or was it Alonso?
I thought it was Alonso because Alonso made that incredible move around the outside of turn 3, and then, which was nuts, by the way. I feel we glossed over that. That was so prime Ferrari Alonso. I loved it. But yeah, I think then Alonso just sneaked in front of Gio when Gio was squeezed by Sainz.
Yeah. So really, it was around. Should they have swapped the Alpines around? Really, wasn't it for Ocon's race? But a couple of points on the board. Do you think he'll be happy with that? Obviously, the last time we raced properly, he won. But it's a couple of points because he had quite a shaky little phase this season, didn't he? So some consistent points. Because you'd expect the Alpine to be somewhere sort of between 6th and 10th, wouldn't you, if they're going to score points usually? So that's a good result, is it? Tell me what you think, chat. What do you think? Is that a good result for Ocon, Dan? It's kind of hard with his teammate up there in 6th, isn't it? You sort of go, oh, it could have been closer, but he's only got Perez and Sainz between them.
Yeah, I think it's good in terms of their fight for the season is with Aston Martin, who didn't score, and only Gasly scored for AlphaTauri. So I feel from that side of things, it's okay. Middle of the road. Points for a team like Alpine that are here, there, and everywhere in the midfield this season. I think that can only be a good thing. But kind of like I alluded to earlier, I do think it could have been more today. But either way, beating both McLarens, both Aston Martins, that's not a bad day.
Adam in chat, Adam Osborne says that yes, P7 was possible for Ocon today. I suppose that to go to your theory actually, Dan. If he was quicker at that phase of the race and they let him through, and then Alonso does come back later, maybe he could have pipped at least Sainz today himself. If the pace was in the car for Alonso to end up 6th then and beat Sainz, then maybe Ocon could have been there towards the end as well. So yeah, maybe 7th was possible. I'd still argue, as I said earlier, if Perez hadn't had that lock-up and so that early unscheduled stop, he probably would have been ahead of Sainz, Alonso, and possibly, yeah, I'd say Leclerc as well. He wasn't that far off if you minus a pit stop, if that makes sense. So, yeah, everybody shuffles down anyway. But yeah, 7th was possible, absolutely. Lando Norris, we've already talked about him with that fight with Perez. Overall, I think that's an okay recovery from yesterday. A great first stint, by the way. I think it was 47 laps, 46, 47 laps on those medium tyres early on. So really great first stint, which is kind of what made his race. I know you love that strategy, Dan, when Aston Martin do it. So you were probably loving every second of that with McLaren trying it, but went really, really long. Great call on strategy. I don't think could have done much more today, really. It's sort of disappointing. I think from a team perspective, McLaren will be disappointed because it's, like you said earlier, 1 point to them. Ferrari were 5th and 7th. That's a big hit in the constructors, although I think that one is going down to Abu Dhabi as well. I think most of these battles that we're seeing are going all the way down to the final race, which is great. But yeah, he got a bit of overtake. He does some team orders down at McLaren. Ricciardo asked to hop out of the way, and he did so, which I think made sense. Norris pitting so late was on the fresher tyres, but you can't, when you've got I'm trying to explain what I'm thinking. When you come from Belgium, where they were in with a shot of pole position and therefore, as it turns out, potentially the win, and they are looking comfortably the 3rd fastest team, although that's an okay recovery from Lando, you do look at McLaren in 10th and 11th and think, that's not a great weekend. If that makes sense. It's not horrific when you take the whole weekend in context, but when you look at their season, that's not a great result, if that makes any sense.
I'm with you. I think pace-wise, they would have hoped for more. And I think this should surely got to be their worst circuit of the season in terms of pace. I know Norris didn't really get a chance to get through to Q3 at the end, but even from his own admission, if he sneaked through, it wouldn't have been any higher than 6th or 7th. So to come away with a point from 13th, I think it's all right. I think when you also factor in there was no safety cars, no yellow flags apart from Seb's moment, no dramas. The only way really he was able to overtake was round turn 1 and also through the overcut, which, yes, you're right, I was absolutely loving. I think that's a good job. I think for me, he's in the mix for driver of the day because most of the other drivers in that midfield got completely stuck. Even Daniel Ricciardo, who had those strange little engine issues, didn't he, off the start, spitting oil down, which thankfully for him didn't turn into anything major. He was able to hold up Stroll and Russell, I think it was at the time, wasn't it? Which was beneficial to Norris at the end. But no doubt, like you mentioned, losing out to Ferrari. Alpine, it won't hurt as much. AlphaTauri, it won't hurt as much because that's not their battle. But either way, being nowhere near a podium, which they've got plenty of this season, nowhere near the top 5, yeah, that's got to hurt them. But either way, we head to Monza, and I think they will be confident that could be a track that suits their car pretty well. So it's not all doom and gloom. But when you do also factor in Spa, like you did just mention, it's not ideal to come away here with just a single point.
No, not at all. But it's a point. And if this is going to go down to the wire, and I've said this a few times this season, we could look back at Zandvoort and say that point from Lando Norris was crucial. It is that close between them and Ferrari that could decide third place. So it might turn out to be a brilliant weekend for them. Thank you for pointing out the engine stuff. I did write it down. He was basically told, wasn't he, Ricciardo, to do a load of default up, down, left, right, A start on his steering wheel to fix whatever the engine problems were. But maybe a bit. I've not seen the press release yet. I'll have a look when we sort of start waffling again. But I wonder if it may be an oil burning or something like that. We see it before when they're overfilled with oil, don't we? I don't know if that's as much a problem now as it used to be. Again, not very technically minded in that respect, but I think, it was dropping oil. It was a bit smoky, and by about lap 5, it had been sorted. So I did think when somebody was accelerating and the smoke was coming out, and I thought, oh, of all the drivers that do not need that right now, it's Daniel Ricciardo. And I thought, I don't know. I'm just so relieved they managed to sort it. I know it's only 11th, but it's 11th place and he's behind his teammate. So if he can, it's another one of those comments I'm going to make, Dan, that sounds, it's so much easier said than done. But if he can just be right behind Lando when he has one of his P4 races, that's 4th and 5th for McLaren. That's what Ricciardo needs to be doing. So yeah, it's hard to get excited for that result for McLaren, but we've certainly seen worse, that's for sure. We're going to get on to the rest of the field in just a moment. Please do drop a like as well for Charles and for Lee for their awesome contributions earlier. Nearly 1,200 watching. We're at 300 likes, so a couple of hundred more would be absolutely awesome for them, not for us, don't worry. And don't forget as well, subscribe if you're new. I suspect, and the general consensus seems to be that this week there will be a lot of videos because I think we're going to get a fair few driver announcements, plus we're building up for Monza as well, so plenty of content to come, and hopefully once I've shook this issue I'm having, let's leave it at that, a bit more consistent scheduling. I can hear people going, no, I said that last week, but bear with me. All right, I'm struggling, but I'm getting there. Yes, so Aston Martin, this will be nice and easy. Look, they're all together for us. How very generous. Lance Stroll, 12th. Sebastian Vettel, 13th for Aston Martin. Stroll, I honestly don't know what to say about Lance Stroll. I know what to say about Seb Vettel. Had that spin at turn 3 whilst going for a move on somebody. I did write it down. If you know before I get there, Dan, please shout.
You did, sir, potentially?
I've written out, oh, wow. Brilliant note, Sean. Vettel, turn 3 spin, trying to overtake Alfa. So it was an Alfa that he possibly Kubica got it wrong. Biggest moment from that, though, Bottas so close to collecting him, wasn't he? Which could have shook the race up quite nicely. Might have even swung it Hamilton's way if we got a safety car, and that would have set the conspiracy theorists off. Aston Martin spins, carbon copy of Mercedes spins, and other Mercedes hits it, would have set people off, wouldn't it? But yeah, just a Seb spin, really, without sounding really harsh to him. Trying to make the move through turn 3 didn't work out, and kind of his race. I mean, his race was pretty much decided yesterday, wasn't he? Really disappointing result from qualifying because of what happened with the Haas boys. Were you surprised not to see a penalty, by the way, Dan, from Mazepin or Schumacher or both? I know Vettel was very much like, these things happened, there was too much traffic there, almost couldn't have been avoided, but I really thought that was slam dunk.
I agree, especially for the Mazepin side of things, because I get why Mazepin was frustrated with Schumacher, but that's a whole different kettle of fish as blocking someone on a qualifying lap, not looking in your mirrors. I was, like you, completely surprised that we didn't get a penalty for that, because in qualifying, we've seen harsher penalties for a lot less, I feel. So, yeah, to ruin Seb's qualifying and on a circuit like this where overtaking's pretty much impossible. I know a couple made it look easy into turn one, but for the most part, very, very difficult. I'm like you. I just don't understand their reasoning why that wasn't a penalty, even if it is busy. Set a precedent, because you now know that drivers are going to say, if they do make that mistake in the future, well, why didn't Mazepin get a penalty? Why didn't Schumacher get a penalty? And it's things like this which do get a bit frustrating sometimes with F1.
Oscar asking in chat if I'm begging for money. No, I'm not begging for money. People contribute out of their free will. I never ask for money. I always try and come to the chat whether there's super chats or not. I'm just asking for likes for those that have been generous with the money they donated. I hope that's cleared that up for you, Oscar. Anyway, I have to stress that if nobody ever donates on these streams, I still do them. It's so generous that people do, and I'm so grateful, and it does so much because that money goes away and helps to fund things on the channel, and it's massively appreciated. But nobody has to donate. I would never ask people to do that, because I was going to say I've never donated to a stream. That's a lie. I did do some charity streams, actually. But anyway, that doesn't really matter, does it? I'm telling you my financial situation now and where I spend my money. Comic relief. I don't really know what else to say on Seb, because I thought it'd be a penalty. Like you say, we've seen penalties given for much less in qualifying. So it was quite surprising not to see that. But I want to get on to Haas, because something's going on there. They do not like each other. We're going to get to that in a minute. But Lance Stroll, as somebody said in chats, can't find who you were, sorry. Is it Flibby Jib? Oh, it's gone. Never mind. You know who you are, talking about Stroll basically spending the entire race behind George Russell. That compromised him massively there. I don't remember seeing an awful lot of him, other than, like I said there, stuck behind Russell and Vettel. It was all compromised yesterday. So no strategy for you today, Dan, from them, which was a shame. But Jamie Santos says, why did they pit Seb so early? They did make it early, didn't they?
There's your weird strategy from Aston. With Seb's spin went out the window. It was brave of them, I suppose. With starting where they did, they had to try something. With Lance well and truly stuck in the traffic, it was worth a gamble. And I think, to answer your question earlier, Lance Stroll would say we could have a longer DRS zone. That would be lovely, because he was well and truly stuck behind Russell, and at one stage looked like he was right up behind him. But because the second sector and mid part of the lap is so tricky to make a move, or so dangerous to make a move, he wasn't able to do it. So yeah, it's kind of like what we said in those very first few races of the season. It's just a mere race for Aston Martin. I don't really think they could have done much more with the pace they had today.
Yeah. I don't want to get into it too much because it's a race reaction stream, and I feel like we've had this conversation before, but they're a really weird team this year. One weekend they'll turn up and you'll think, right, they're going to have a great weekend, and they'll not deliver. And then another weekend they'll turn up and you'll think, well, they're going to really struggle, and then they do deliver. And then another weekend they'll be kind of nowhere. And I can't work Aston Martin out. I think they have been a victim of that rule change with the floor. And I think, most teams, if not all of them now, are focused on next year, but I think they've focused very early on next year, and they'd be crazy if they didn't, quite frankly. So really weird. Antonio Giovinazzi, 14th place for him, did go into the back of an Alpine, and I think somebody, possibly George Russell, went into the back of him. So he had quite a crazy first lap, Giovinazzi. But that lad, by the way, all week, all we've heard is that he's going to lose his seat. He's done. He's not good enough. All right, one weekend doesn't change that, but what a performance in qualifying to be P7. And I think 14th place today is probably where that car probably would have been if you put Raikkonen in there. I don't think that position really changes. So a good race from him. Good weekend overall. Robert Kubica, I said it at the start, Dan, it is 15th. He did make a stop less than his teammate. He was 32.6 seconds behind, but he only had FP3 in qualifying in that car. I think that is a really good weekend for Robert Kubica. Finished ahead of both the Williams, finished ahead of the Haas as well, Mick Schumacher, and obviously Tsunoda and Mazepin, who didn't finish. I think he could be very, very happy with that, given the short notice.
Yeah, and I think it's done his reputation a lot of good this weekend, considering how that season at Williams went, where he got the points, but overall was very much the second of the two between him and Russell. So I think to come back in the way he has this weekend at such short notice, not being in the Formula One car for 2 years, Hulkenberg, when he came in last year at Silverstone, at least it hadn't been that long. What was it, 6 races since he'd been in the Formula One car? So for Kubica, with all his history, to come back and put in a really solid performance, out-qualify the 2 Haas cars, which, yes, I know it's the slowest car on the grid. To be able to do that quite comfortably, just jumping in the car, I think was really, really impressive. And on a circuit where we saw plenty of mistakes in practice and quali between the 2 Williams cars, to just have a overall pretty much clean weekend, I think is really, really commendable. And I think Robert can be really proud of the job he's done this weekend. And you're right, for Gio, he's under a lot of pressure, that boy. And I think criticism is rightly there, because on Sunday, he's not quite been able to score the points when he needed to. And that 7th place opened a lot of eyes, rightly so. But again, he's not scored points. However, it was a puncher, I think, that really cost him a chance, because I think he was in that group with Russell and Stroll, Ricciardo, right on the edge of scoring 1. And I know Alfa are in this strange situation where they need a few more points than 1 to catch Williams now. And I don't think they're really under any threat from Haas. So it's not crucial for them. But I just think for Gio, he didn't need that puncher today. He got very lucky to get away with the contact with Alonso. And I think you're right. I think Russell was a little bit close to all of them as well off the start. He was lucky there, but for whatever reason, Gio, whenever he has a great Saturday, something goes wrong on a Sunday. And I just hope that Alfa Romeo will appreciate the performance he did today. But I also know they've got a lot of other drivers that are hungry for those seats. And I think this weekend or not, I don't think it really helps Gio's situation, because I think the team are aware what he can do on a Saturday, aware what he can do on a Sunday, and they're going to make their decision on many, many more factors than that.
Well, I mean, he's been in that. That's his 3rd season in the car. If they don't know what he can do by now,
right?
Because I think I read somewhere that Fred Vasseur had said a couple of races ago, you've got 3 more races. 3 more races for what? I've always said that. I know you've always defended him, Dan, and I like Gio, Italian Jesus, as people keep telling me he's nicknamed. I didn't even know that until this weekend. That's how much attention I pay on social media. Okay, boomer. But anyway, I have always said that what we're getting from Giovinazzi is probably all I ever expected from him, which isn't a bad thing. Actually, that's a lie. It's probably more than I expected from him, but I think this is just what he does. I don't think he's a bad driver. I don't think he's been horrendous in that Alfa. All right, he's not up against prime Kimi Räikkönen, because prime Kimi Räikkönen, by the way, who I think is massively underrated. But anyway, prime Kimi Räikkönen probably would have absolutely destroyed Gio. So it's a completely rubbish comparison in many ways, but he is taking the fight to Kimi, who's a world champion. So I think he's done all right, Gio, but I'd be more amazed if Giovinazzi kept that seat than if Bottas stayed at Mercedes, to be honest. I think it's done.
Wow.
I think that is... I think you're looking at Bottas and either Albon or De Vries, and then whichever one out of Albon and De Vries doesn't go to Alfa will go to Williams and replace Russell, who goes to Mercedes, Bottas obviously to Alfa. That's what I'm fully expecting in the next week or so. I've got to be honest, just very quickly on silly season. As much as I love the speculation, I do really hope this gets announced soon, because it's the worst kept secret that Russell is going to Mercedes. It's the worst kept secret that it's like, if they turned around and announced Stroll tomorrow at Aston Martin, I'd go, well, yeah, we know, but that's still a better kept secret than Russell to Mercedes and Bottas to Alfa. But I'm just so fed up of waking up every morning and seeing a different report and people taking photos. Oh, look, George Russell farted near Fred Vasseur. It's like, oh, and? So what? Valtteri Bottas walked past Jos Capito, must be signing for Williams. I'm really bored of it now. I love silly season when it's not obvious. But anyway, again, big shout out to Robert Kubica. And of course, I know he's not got symptoms, but get well soon as well. to Kimi Räikkönen. Hopefully back for Monza. Might be a quick turnaround. He needs 2 negative tests before he can pop in for FP1. I think he's having his first one either today or tomorrow. So would be nice to see Kimi at Monza, because obviously Kimi, Ferrari, that tighter Monza, would be nice to see him get one last run out there. But I also wouldn't be totally surprised if he has to sit out that one as well. But we shall see. Get well soon, Kimi. Nicholas Latifi, 16th. Good race from him today, I think. Got nice and racy as well. One stopper paid off for him. George Russell, 17th. The timing screen says stopped. I know he had a late pit stop, but the timing screen says stop, so I don't know if he technically DNF'd, but he obviously had a 5-second penalty for pit lane speeding, ran into the back of Gio at the start, and then there was something else as well with George Russell, which I've completely forgotten about. The late pit stop was for a reason, wasn't it?
He had his 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah.
Probably what you're thinking of. And I think he did DNF. I think he came in and then went round and then came back in again to retire.
Yeah, KTB in chat actually just confirming that that he retired. Ryan as well. Thank you very much, Ryan Donnelly too. Just saying he retired. So that was obviously a tactical decision from Williams, because you can pit him now and he can put a new gearbox in for the next one, can't he? So yeah. Anything you want to say on Williams, Dan? I'm kind of lost. I'm going to look from my notes where he's saying, see if there's anything I've got. But I think Latifi was involved in some good scraps, and Russell was kind of involved in some good fighting early on and some good defensive driving as well to keep cars behind. If there had been any chaos ahead, he may have ended up with a point today had he not had to take that penalty for pit lane speeding, which is frustrating. But yeah, a bit of a downer, like McLaren versus Belgium, but not horrific for Williams. That's probably where they'd roughly be anyway on pace.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, there's not really much more to add on their race, because it was quiet after qualifying yesterday, and I think Latifi, who put in a great qualifying until that crash, will be annoyed he had to start from the pit lane. I was surprised at their overall pace this weekend. I know it's a track, again, which is very, very difficult to overtake, but the fact that we almost got 2 Williams in Q3, the fact we did get both of them into Q2, the fact that they were able to hold their positions, that's awesome. I know Spa was Spa. We don't count Spa and Hungary. They were both out in Q1. So I would argue that this weekend was probably, if Spa and Hungary hadn't happened, would have been their best opportunity for points, because that car looked really quick. And I think was certainly on par with Aston Martin, which a few races before the summer break, if you'd have said that to them, I think they'd have bitten your arm off. So again, it's going to be annoying that they haven't scored points. Are they in the fight with Aston, AlphaTauri, Alpine? No. Are they in a fight with Alfa Romeo? I would kind of argue no at this stage, being, 17 points in front of Alfa Romeo? Something like that. Either way, it's a funny one for Williams. They will very much be looking forward to next year. I think they're now in a position where they can afford to just put all focus on next season. Like you said, make the announcement. Just let us know who's in that car at this stage. But yeah, a funny day for Williams. I did want to quickly ask you, though. It's stepping back a little bit, so feel free to ignore me. On the Alfa Romeo thing, do you think it would be Kubica in the car again? Or do you think it would be Ilott? Because Ilott was at IndyCar this weekend, which was the reason they went with Kubica. And I just wondered how you think that would play out next week if Kimi wasn't able to race.
First of all, I'm glad you've gone back to Alpha. Giovinazzi had a puncture. So had to make that extra stop just to get that in quickly now. There'll be somebody that watches for the first hour and goes, you didn't mention it. I did. I have now. There you go. Yeah, Giovinazzi got a puncture. So without that extra pit stop, actually, what was he? 8 behind Vettel. So he's 13th, 2 behind Stroll. He would have been 12th today without that extra pit stop. So actually, very good drive from Giovinazzi. Forgot about his puncture. Apologies for that one. And the other thing I wanted to mention quickly as well was Latifi's stunning overtake around the outside of turn 1 on Nikita Mazepin. I know it's a Haas, but fantastic overtake from Latifi. That is an excellent question, because I saw, Dan, Callum Ilott said that's something along the lines on Twitter of that's just the way these things fall because he's elsewhere this weekend. They're both reserve drivers. So I would think, given that Kubica has done this weekend, if they had to put somebody else in, they'd probably stick with Robert because he's got a race weekend's experience under his belt now. However, if they decide, and he's still mentioned among the silly season stuff, if they decide for next season they're going to go for Callum Ilott, perfect chance to give him a run out and some race weekend experience. So,
yeah, it's worth a chance for them, you'd feel, because although Robert did a great job today, I don't think he's really in the running for that car next season. But at the same time, with Ilott doing his race in IndyCar or his test in IndyCar this weekend, there is talk that he's got a full-time seat there next year anyway. So that'll be, I don't know, I just, food for thought really, isn't it? Because that would be a great chance and a great story for Callum to get a run out at Monza of all places as well.
I will do super chats in a moment, and I've got a couple that I've missed, but I will go through them, I promise. I just want to quickly run through the rest of the field now for what it's worth. Actually, no, we'll answer that one from field because it kind of ties into just leaving Williams here. It says, okay, I donate because I love F1 content. Thank you for the content. No, thank you very much, mate. Massively appreciated. Said, odds on Russell move announced this week. Toto Wolf said 50-50 to Sky. Cheeky, because of course either it will or it won't. I think I think they will, but I think they're waiting for Alfa to announce Bottas because it's Monza, it's Alfa Romeo's home race. It's not Sauber's home race, of course, but it is Alfa Romeo's home race. It makes sense to make that announcement for them from a PR point of view. I did expect them to announce their full lineup this week, but I wonder if they might wait a little longer and see what happens with Albon and Williams first, and De Vries and Williams. But I think highly likely we'll hear something this week on at least Bottas and Russell. The reason I say that, by the way, is because if Mercedes announce Russell, then everyone pretty much knows Bottas is going to Alfa. If Alfa announce Bottas, then everybody knows Russell's going to Mercedes, so there's no point putting the other announcement off any longer. So there you go, mate. Mick Schumacher, 18th today. We've said it a million times, mate. It's what he has to do, isn't it? Really get the Haas to the end, hope for some chaos, and maybe he'll be able to snatch the odd point here and there if we get a mad race. But all right from him. I know he had to pit early because of his front wing. I don't know where the damage on the front wing came from. However, whilst we're talking about Haas, Nikita Mazepin, that move to defend on the straight was dangerous and it was late. That on the pit entry, basically, he was pushing Schumacher at pit entry or towards pit entry in a very late and dangerous move. Kind of similar to, can you remember Bahrain last year when he was in F2 and he was defending hard and running dry? It was very similar to that. That was naughty from Mazepin. But I go back to what I said earlier. Those two do not like each other. Something is going on there. We know that they kind of have an agreement, or most teams do, that 1 week in qualifying, one driver goes first. The following week, it's another driver. Apparently, Schumacher jumped that this weekend. Whether that was a team decision, I don't know. Mazepin didn't like it, which caused that chaos at the final couple of corners in qualifying, which compromised Vettel. He was too aggressive today with that move. They don't like each other. It's quite clear. Mick Schumacher said in his interview afterwards he doesn't think they'll sit down and thrash it out and sort it out. I don't really know what to say. I think that's a really bad move. I mean, Mazepin's retirement was into the pits and game over. I don't know if he obviously had a mechanical issue of some sort, but something's not right there, is it? And I wonder if this now, as this is how my brain works. This is what I'm like in the shower on a morning. I'm not even kidding. I wonder if now, with all these question marks over Alpha's seat, if maybe Mick Schumacher and Ferrari might be tempted to move into Alpha instead of leaving him in that Haas alongside Mazepin if they're not getting on. Would it be better for the team if they did split them up?
It's worth the question, you'd think, wouldn't you? Because you're right. Today's, I can't believe that went so under the radar from Crofty and JB in commentary, because that was a horrific move from Mazepin. He also did something similar to Perez as well, not on the start-finish straight, but down by the stadium section where Perez eventually did a bit of a dummy. But Mazepin loves to squeeze people, and I think what's extra frustrating about it, not only the fact it was his teammate, it was dangerous, is the fact that it goes unpunished. Like, why was that not even investigated? Why was that not even noted that that's an issue? And due to the nature of how the team is run, it's probably not really going to be flagged in a team meeting either. It's just all a bit of a mess. And what I will add on the qualifying situation is I did have a listen to Mick Schumacher's team radio. You can find it on YouTube during quali. And he asked old Gary Gannon, his lovely team engineer, can I overtake? Can I go in front? And he said yes. So I don't quite understand why that was allowed. I thought he would say no, and Schumacher would just go for it anyway, something along those lines. But no, they just said it was fine. So something's really not right within that team at the moment. I know there's always been talk, and again, I don't want to slip too much into silly season, but there's always been talk on whether Gene Haas wants to stay. Will it become your Alkali F1 team, Team Russia, whatever you want to call it? There's always going to be questions about that. But at least internally, from what we can see, it's just all a bit of a nightmare here, there, and everywhere. On track, it's not great. Off track, it seems to be even worse. And like you've mentioned, it wouldn't surprise me if Alfa may just hold off a little bit, may just assess what's going on there, because Schumacher, in what's been a terrible car this year, I think performed pretty well, better than I expected, in all honesty. So it's at least worth looking at, because at the moment, something's really not right in that team.
It's not, and the last thing Haas need is those two colliding, because if those two collide, I know that you've got the Mazepin money, but that's, that doesn't mean that they're suddenly the richest team on the grid and everything's wonderful. They're still going to have obviously there's a cost cap anyway, but I'd imagine Haas probably spends substantially less than the cost cap. But if they have a massive accident on that start-finish straight, if that happens somewhere like Monza, halfway down the straight or 2/3 down the straight, and you have an airplane crash like that, obviously there's the risk to the drivers, but from a team perspective, you then got to repair those cars, which will cost you an absolute bloody fortune. And if it had happened this weekend, 2 cars wrecked, it's a mad rush to get them ready for next week. So it's just not needed. And what Haas need to do, and we keep saying it, but it's the same as Williams in 2019. All they can do and all they must do is, aside from any reliability problems, get those cars to the end of the race. Because if you have a Hungary situation again later in the season, or something like that, or a Baku with all the chaos late on, they could be there to pick up a point, which might not make a difference to their championship position, but it's a huge morale boost for the team. And if you do get a chaotic, going back a few years now, Belgium 98 race, they could end up picking up 4 points. If they pick up 4 points, that's a few million quid in their back pocket. So they've got to stamp on that quickly, Haas. And I'm surprised, actually. I don't know if Gunther Steiner can't, because of the investment that Dimitri Mazepin puts into the team. I'd like to think that him and Gene Haas have still got control over things, but I'm really surprised. And maybe we'll get it in the Netflix Drive to Survive thing, I don't know, but I'm really surprised we don't hear more of Gunther Steiner getting angry, because when Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean were brushing past each other with minor contacts, given what we could have seen between, I mean, look at Baku, Schumacher and Mazepin. That would have been a huge crash. These little contacts that Magnussen and Grosjean were having, his blood pressure was through the roof, and he was losing it, and doors were getting smashed and all sorts. So I'm just surprised Gunther Steiner hasn't stamped this out quickly before it gets to that point, but we'll see. Mazepin, I assume, was just a mechanical issue. I didn't hear anything on the broadcast, but I agree. I think Schumacher's done better than I expected this season, and I think, especially given that he's got that thing over his head, hasn't he, of not maybe performing very well in his first season, but maybe because he's at the back in a car that no one expected anything in, there's no pressure on him. So, although that name, M. Schumacher on the timing screen, I think probably brings quite a bit of pressure. Yuki Tsunoda, disappointing weekend, I think, spun in FP1, didn't he? Not a great result in quali, unless I'm getting that completely wrong. And then a loss of power in the race early on, and it was game over for him, really. So, not much to say on Yuki, probably staying in that car next season. So, yeah, I will come to you guys in chat shortly for some questions. But before we do that, I'm going to come to you now. Driver of the day. Sergio Perez won the official driver of the day. Let me know in chat, one surname, who is your driver of the day. Dan, who you got this week?
Ooh, I'm going to stick to my guns, what I said earlier. I really struggle, though Perez's recovery was mad. It was so good. I want to give it to the driver that had an almost flawless race. And I think someone that definitely did that today was Pierre Gasly. 4th place in an Alpha Tauri is no mean feat. And something I'd mentioned earlier on, though on paper, Baku, that podium was his best race, today we had no safety cars. There was no one crashing out. There was no luck to take advantage of. This was pure driving, and in a car which certainly isn't even the 5th best car. Maybe it was today, but normally it's not. To come away with a 4th place and comfortably at it as well, I really think that was a really complete performance from Gasly. So he's my driver of the day.
Wicked. Thanks. You took mine. I didn't think you were going to pick him. I've got it written down. I was like, I honestly didn't think you'd pick him. Damn it. I haven't even got a second backup.
Yeah, come on. You got to think on your feet now. Come on.
I think it'd be harsh not to put Verstappen right up there. He was faultless. Sorry, he did have that minor lockup.
And no Grand Slam, remember?
And no Grand Slam. What a shocking result. No, I think you'd be mad not to put Verstappen in there. Hamilton was fairly relentless. I wouldn't maybe say driver of the day for Hamilton this week, but I think Verstappen deserves that mention. If I was voting on the poll, I'd pick Verstappen. But to give you another option, I think probably Fernando Alonso. I think has flown a little bit under the radar, despite the fact that we saw quite a bit from him, including collisions. What more do you want? And that move around the outside, that first lap from him, I know he loves the first lap, but that move, like you said, Dan, around the outside of that banking of turn 3, can we knock down all tracks and put banking at just every track somewhere, please? It looks incredible. Great stuff from Fernando today. Absolutely up there for me. Like I say, if I was voting on the poll, probably Verstappen, but just to mix things up a bit, I'll go with Alonso. I think he deserves a mention. Let's see what you guys are saying. Find the first one. So, plastic in puppet. Plasticine puppet would make more sense than plastic in puppet, which I realise now I've said it. It sounds absolutely disgusting, and I'm so sorry. That is inappropriate. I didn't read it properly. Thank you very much, mate. Says Alonso. Marie says Gasly. Magic Muffin says Alonso. F1 fan says Alonso. I thought that was left field. Obviously not. Geo for... Yeah. It's gone. The chat's gone. Hang on. There we go. Nice person says Gasly. Oksana says Perez or Alonso. Corey's gone with Hamilton. Let's see. Somebody different. My chat's playing up. Is the chat playing up on stream, Dan? If you've got it open.
Oh, it seems okay for me.
Might be my PC then. If the stream suddenly goes dead, it's just my PC having a moment. There we go. I'll go from there then. I don't know where I got to, but Dave says Alonso. Ashwin says Gasly. KTB says Perez. Spekar says Alonso. Raul says Gasly. The Formula One News Squad says Gasly. Charles says Stoff, obviously. Sue says Kubica. I don't think I could give him driver of the day over other drivers, but he certainly had a fantastic result today, given again that he didn't get in that car until FP3. Did all right, did Robert. Sir Chives says Verstappen. Josh says Gasly. Snake says Gasly. Tim says Leclerc. A Cringe Law says Perez for the action. A lot of people would agree with that one, I'm sure. Gaming with Steve says Gazman. I missed your comment earlier, Gaming with Steve. I think you made a great point, and I was going to read it out and I forgot, so apologies, mate. I'll see if I find that later, or you could pop it in again. The Max says Gasly 100%. Janus says Raikkonen. Of course, get well soon, Kimmy. Verstappen or Hamilton, both faultless. Sergio deserves it. Giga Kubica says genetic failure. Red Raven says Gasly or Verstappen. Didn't say the first bit this week. Mr. Bungle says Gasly. A lot of love for Pierre Gasly, as you might expect. The smoke screen, good shout. What an atmosphere. Absolutely fantastic. I'll come to your super chats in just a moment. 3-0 says Grosjean. There you go, Dan. We've had a Stoff and a Roman. Look at that. A couple more then. See if it's somebody serious but different. So Sawn28 says Norris. Flamingo says Bottas. I mean, Bottas as a wingman today, if you want to call him that, did a great job at keeping Verstappen behind for a lap. Was it a lap or two? Something like that. So he kind of did all he could for them. So I think that's fair enough. I don't think he had a particularly brilliant... Was it lap 18 when his engineer said, you're not in this to win it, basically? I was like, oh, God, Valtteri, go home, mate. Go to bed. Bless him. Grosjean again coming in, of course. Gasly and Kubica. Leclerc is a good shout. Seb said the same as well. Obviously not Seb Vettel. I think Leclerc's a good shout in 5th place there. 2 more then, super quickly. Driver of the weekend to Dan, by the way. Definitely Verstappen. And 1 more. I'm trying to find somebody different, but I don't think... thank you, Red Raven. I nearly said it that time, actually, funnily enough. There you go. Mario says Orange Army. They're not drivers, but I think they deserve a lot of praise for that atmosphere this weekend. Also, can we have like DJs at every race? It just added to it. Even on TV, you could just hear it in the background, and you're sort of like, I'm looking forward to this. If you've got any questions, please do pop them in chat. Don't forget to drop a like as well. We're getting close to that 500 mark. for those who have contributed today. Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe as well. I tried to open Streamlabs while I tried to talk. I can't do it. Thank you for all your super chats today. I'll read those out that I have missed, and I think I missed about 3. So I will quickly find those. When we did that one, did Charles, did Justin. Suji says, forget Red Bull. I think Gasly should knock on McLaren's door to replace Ricardo. A lol. There says, unpopular opinion, perhaps. I don't think for next season. But if Ricardo struggles next year like he did this year, then maybe McLaren might consider it. But I think, and I might be wrong, is he not contracted to end of 23? Or is it end of 22, Dan? Now I've put you on the spot.
Oh.
Get all your information out on contracts. Come on.
I feel it was a 2-year with an option for an extra. Just to be nice and awkward for you.
Well, apparently Vettel's. I did my predictions, and I read up on Vettel's announcement. I am getting to a point, don't worry. Got to Vettel's announcement, and it was all 2-year deal. Bottomar Safnauer has said this week that it's 1 year with an option for another one. So now there's these rumours flying around that there's a rumour, and it is only a rumour. Do not take this as gospel. Tammy, Vettel Leclerc over on Twitter, who is brilliant, by the way, at translating some fantastic articles in Europe. So great. Definitely give her a follow if you're over there. Saying that apparently Fernando Alonso was offered a contract by Lawrence Stroll to replace Sebastian Vettel, and Alonso turned it down. That comes, I believe, from AMUS, so take that with a fair bit of salt. You know, if I'd have turned around and said according to the Sun, then just burn it. It doesn't mean anything. But yeah, AMUS apparently reported that, so I don't know what's going on there, but the official line from Aston Martin is that they're just, I guess, effectively crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and they've got a date that they need to agree things by, and that there's no pressure there. So I assume Seb is staying. I'd be very surprised if they don't keep him on. Technically 2 podiums this year. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised. But anyway, just something to bear in mind. And Mark as well, thank you very much for your contribution. He says, as a Dutchman, I couldn't be more proud of Max. Thanks for the wonderful content, Sean. No problem. Thank you so much for your super chat. And thank you, as a Brit, to you as a Dutchman, for that atmosphere this weekend. I don't know if you were personally responsible, but I still want to say that because it was absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I keep talking about it, but I just think every race should be like that. And Verstappen's going to be around for a while in Formula One. He's actually been here a lot longer than I realised anyway. But yeah, he'll be here for a while. So this whole Zandvoort atmosphere thing could end up being up there with the likes of Monza and Silverstone as a must visit. In fact, I've maybe argued, Dan, it's a must visit now. I think I've got to go next year. Are we going? Should we just go?
Yeah, why not?
Not now.
Come with us.
Yeah, you can all come.
Everyone.
I'm not paying.
Sean's paying. Yeah.
I'm not paying.
Well, you can't put the offer out there.
just rocking up to Zandvoort with 1,100 people. Hey, why not? Thank you very much for all your super chats today as well. Again, Gaming with Steve. I said Seb made up 25 seconds in 10 laps. Thank you very much, mate. It was that. I guess at 10 start of last lap, he was 3 or 4 tenths behind Stroll. The other thing was except Mercedes and Williams, Mercedes powered cars struggling. Thank you very much. It was that. I thank you. I've mentioned it. Vettel was closing in very quickly. His final lap was, although his last lap wasn't great actually, but that might be, he might have had some traffic or made a mistake or just backed off because it was the last lap, I don't know, but his laps were pretty quick and he was closing in, so that's a very good point. Thank you for that. I'm glad you brought that one in, but yeah, I don't know. I think that race, what would you give that out of 10, Dan? Because I think a few people struggle with this. I'd say that was a solid 7. Am I being generous?
When you just said it, I feel I'm in between a 6 and a 7 because that was a really, really good fight at the front. But I'm a big sucker for a fight in the midfield, and I feel we didn't really get that. But I suppose for a race that we had no safety cars, 1 yellow flag, that wasn't too bad. Yeah, I think 6 or 7 is where I about put it.
Yeah, chat pretty much the same for the most part. 6.5, 6, 7. Some people saying 3. I don't think that race was... I'm quite surprised, actually, by the reaction on Twitter. I mean, Twitter's Twitter. I don't know why I take any of that seriously.
That's on you.
That's just me being an idiot. But, yeah, like, that was the worst race ever. Like, did you can see last week. Last week's race was so bad there wasn't one. That can't be the worst race ever. It was much better than people seem to be making out. I'm not gonna look back in a year's time and go, cool, last year's Dutch Grand Prix was amazing, but it was good enough. And when you think we've got Sochi coming up soon, enjoy it. I mean, a strategy intrigue, it's the line I like to use. We saw more overtaking than I expected. There was tension at the front because we didn't really know which way it was going to go. There was always that threat that someone was going to stick it in the gravel and we'd end up with a safety car, which could turn the whole race on its head. I thought it was good. It wasn't amazing, but I was just quite surprised at how many people thought it was rubbish. But chat seems to be a few 4s and 3s coming in, but for the most part, it's 5, 6s, 6.5, 7. Yeah. So maybe I was a little bit generous at 7, sorry. But yeah, I think that was all right. I suppose it depends what you're looking for in a race. If you're wanting lots of crashes and lots of overtaking, then no, that race was terrible. If you're wanting close racing throughout the field and great strategy, then yeah, that was a 10 out of 10. It depends what you're looking for from a race. We're all different, aren't we? So there you go. Anyway, chat, questions. Let's see what you've got. I realised they asked for numbers, and now all my questions have disappeared now. Max Claydon says, did Schumacher balls up letting Barrichello pass on the final corner of the 2002 US Grand Prix at Indy, or did he just let him win after Austria? Wow, if F1 Word was around in 2002, you'd all hate me because it'd be so biased. I mean, 2002 title was Ferrari's, wasn't it? And Schumacher's, pretty much slam dunk. 2001, pretty much the same. I think he could have let Barrichello win a few more, quite frankly. I'm glad that he didn't, but I think he had the gap in the championship, didn't he, Dan? I know maybe you weren't watching back in 2002, but I think you'll know. You have good knowledge of history. I think championship was pretty much done, so he could have let Barrichello have a few more, maybe. It's not how racing works.
Nice. Would have been nice, but I suppose when you've got a mindset like that, so hungry to win all the time, I mean, you're definitely more qualified on me to talk about this one. I was quite young for the 2001 and 2 seasons.
Were you born? You must have been, yeah.
Just about, yeah. 99.
I've been watching a decade in 2002, and you were 3.
Yeah, so if I could remember the race, that would be very impressive.
Raft says, why Sainz lost so much time compared to Leclerc?
I'm interested to know about this as well, to be honest, because he was right with Leclerc until about 10 laps to go.
It's a good question. I'll be honest, I don't know. Honestly, mate. Sorry. I'll have a look at Ferrari's press release in a minute and see if anything's said. So leave that with me. So I tell you what, Dan's going to hate me now because he knows I'm off to scroll through Twitter. I'm going to throw him a horrible question. So Adonis says, in equal machinery, is Bottas a top 6 driver? I'll leave that with you, Dan. I'm just going to go check Twitter.
Okay, well, first of all, Adonis, when Sean said he's going to give me a horrible question, he wasn't aiming that at you because that's not a bad question. And for the record, I need to know your answer straight after, buddy. I'm not letting you get away with that one.
All right.
Man. Top 3 are clear. Top 3 are clear. I don't need to mention names for top 3. And then after that, I would put Ricciardo still in that top 6. Perez also in that top 6. Russell Norris. And there's going to be so many other drivers. Sainz, no, I don't think you do put Bottas in the top 6. I really don't. I think the Williams Bottas that we saw that earned the move to Mercedes had the potential to be top 6, and probably for a couple of seasons off some of those performances in a Williams with Massa as his teammate, definitely was top 6. But I think after a couple of subpar years at Mercedes, this year really hasn't been great. And I think what really cements it for me is that his battling in a midfield has been pretty awful this year. I don't want to be too mean to him because I think he's a driver that could do pretty awesome things in an Alfa Romeo, in a Williams. And I think seeing him in that midfield fight week in, week out, and as a driver that needs to kind of reprove himself in that midfield, I don't think he's going to be bad. I think he's definitely top 10 on the grid. But top 6, Not anymore for me.
There's Ferrari, for all their experience in F1, they do the worst press releases. So I'm going to read it because it's just so. It's like, well, thanks. It says no drama. There were no particularly dramatic moments in the race, and so for a long time, the Scuderia Ferrari drivers ran in their grid positions of 5th and 6th. It was only in the final stages that Carlos had to give best to Fernando Alonso, who was on softer compound tyres and had better pace. The points haul of 16 is nevertheless a good one, given the team's closest rival only picked up a single point. So to answer your question, I don't know why Sainz was losing pace, and apparently neither did Ferrari, or they're not going to tell us. Actually, to be fair to Ferrari, they are, out of all the teams, them and Alfa Romeo are the most secretive with everything. Although that said, Haas haven't put out any B-roll this year, which I'm appalled at, by the way, but I'm guessing they couldn't afford to run the filming, which I'd rather they focused on racing, to be honest, rather than having to put out B-roll. I saw another question, actually. I will answer it, don't worry, Dan, I'm not fobbing it off. From Mark, who wants to know what Grand Slam means. So Grand Slam, unless I'm wrong, is pole position, led every lap, fastest lap and win. Or is it just led every lap, fastest lap and win?
No, and pole position. And if John T's in the chat, save me. But I also think there's something if you top every practice session as well, on top of that.
A Grand Slam.
No, that's when you get sprint qualifying pole and normal pole.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Pirelli Speed King Award. That's back next week.
Yay. Hey, more action in Monza. I'm cool with it.
See, Jamie says pole fastest lap win. F1 fan says pole fastest lap win. I'm sure you had to lead every lap for a Grand Slam, but
definitely.
There you go. But I'd be happy with pole fastest lap and race win, to be honest.
Yeah. Max didn't get fastest lap because he wasn't perfect today, but, close enough.
Bottas top 6 driver. Who we got? In no particular order. I'm not that daft. No, I'm not gonna list them. You can all work out who my top 6 are. Hang on, I'm just trying to work it out now. So I think I tend to agree with you. I think the Bottas we saw at Williams, the potential was there for him to be pretty special. But he came to Mercedes whilst they were dominating the sport, replacing a world champion. He was only ever going to get in that car and be number 2, and I think that kind of didn't scupper his career because he's won races. So it's unfair to say it scuppered his career, but had he stayed at Williams, maybe he'd have done a bit more. Had he gone somewhere else, he might have led that team, if that makes sense. But going to Mercedes is always going to be number 2, and so became a bit of a Barrichello style in that regard, although I'd probably rate Barrichello higher.
Ooh, I'm not sure about that, but
really?
I suppose I didn't really see the bulk of Barrichello's career because I first really started watching in 2007, so I only ever saw the Honda, the Brawn, the Williams Barrichello. And I still think Bottas, like I said, I rated him really high at Williams, and I think the first couple seasons with Merc, I don't think he was that bad. But maybe I'm not quite giving Barrichello the credit he deserves.
See, Barrichello was, I think, rapid. And I think what he did in 97 for Stewart in their first year was impressive. 98, solid. 99, he could have won a race. Or maybe not win a race. He was challenging in Brazil for a really strong result till his car failed in not a particularly brilliant car. So, although it was a race-winning car because Herbert won Nürburgring that year. But I think Barrichello was a very, very good driver who's one of those that is a little bit underrated, to be honest. But yeah, that's maybe a conversation for another day. I don't know. I'm just trying to think who would fill that top 6. So you're looking at your Alonsos, your Hamiltons, your Verstappens. They're in there, aren't they? We know that. I think prime Vettel would be. I don't know if Vettel now is, which sounds really harsh. I don't know. Ricciardo, I used to put in there, but I'm not sure he is. So I'd probably argue out of the grid at the moment, if he is top 6, it is only 6th, if that makes sense. I don't think he's
You've
top
named a different
3.
top 6 to me as well, by the way. Just throwing it out
to
there.
be fair, I didn't name a top 6. I named 3 drivers and then said I wouldn't put Vettel in there now. Prime Vettel I would have done, but not Vettel now. Vettel, who, by the way, again, conversation for another day, I think peaked too soon in his career, or peaked very early in his career. But anyway, yeah, I don't know who my top 6 drivers would be, but I think, would you put your Leclercs and your Sainz's and your Perez's above Bottas?
Well, I didn't even put Alonso in my top 6. I forgot about Alonso as well. So Norris, Russell, I think they go in, or at least are in the conversation in front of Bottas.
Adonis makes a fair point. Says we are judging Bottas against 4 years of prime Lewis, which is fair, but I'm also judging it in the fact that even when Mercedes had the clear fastest car, he was nowhere near Hamilton, and he should have been second pretty much every race when that car was dominating, and he wasn't. I say it about Mark Webber as well. People get mad with me. People are always like, and it's like, well, Mark Webber was in the best. If Vettel's achievements were all just because he had the best car, why was Mark Webber not second every race? There was only one season where he challenged. So there you go. Again, conversation properly for another day. But yeah, I'll have to ponder that. But I don't. As a gut reaction when the question came up, my answer was no. But then I also look at the field and I think, well, has Bottas been horrific? No. Has he been amazing? No. I think a lot of people are still living on Australia 2019. If I'm being, again, based on Twitter, which is not the place to be. But there seems to be this whole, look at what he did in Australia 2019. Congratulations, it's 2021. I'm not interested in what he did in Australia in 2019. He's not won since Sochi 2020. Was it Sochi? Last year?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right at the start of the season as well.
That's, yeah. Certainly the last 18 months has been disappointing, very disappointing, but I hate him, apparently, so there we go. It doesn't matter, does it? I'll ponder that one, but that's the debate. I'll let everyone... Cool. I'm sorry, just something threw me there. I saw Warframe. It says, Josie said, Prime Vettel, what is this? Warframe? I don't know what Warframe is. A game?
It is a game, a very bad game. So sorry, mate, your chat's probably not going to be happy with that, but a very bad game.
I've never heard it. It doesn't begin with an F. The only games I play begin with an F. F1, FIFA, and Fallout.
And Fortnite, I bet.
Oh, no. God, no. No. I haven't got 2 weeks to spend on a game. Anyway, questions in chat. Let's move away from Bottas before I put my foot right in it. That's really got me thinking, actually. That could even be a live stream on its own, Dan. Listing our top 6 drivers. Dan's gone. Dan, hello. He's done a runner.
I'm brave enough. I don't know if you are.
I don't think I am. He could have won Melbourne 99 instead of Irvine, says Alacy257. So Melbourne 99 was top 3 was Irvine, Frenson, Ralph Schumacher, wasn't it? Because the McLarens retired. That was the one with that crazy restart after the safety car. When Hakkinen had problems, and Irvine kind of hung around waiting to go, and they all went flying past. So that was also the one where the Stewarts caught fire on the line. So I'm not sure I mean, if the Stewart hadn't caught fire on the line, then maybe. And he was pretty yeah. Oh, I love the 90s. I need to get the DVDs. I really do.
I've been saying this for years.
I know.
Just send it. Sorry, I'm a bad influence. Chat will probably tell you the adult answer.
Yeah, Alonso 2.0 is much better than 1.0 when he was a complainer. More fun now. Pity not a fast car, says Daniel. I think Alonso's doing a great job this season. I tend to agree. I think he has probably gone away, because he did have a good old moan, didn't he, did Fernando? And I think he probably went away and then realised, actually, I really love F1. And now he's come back. He's kind of I think, in fact, he said it himself. He's sort of learned to appreciate what F1 is when you've been away. So he's come back and he appreciates it more. And I think that's great. And I think he's genuinely in a good place for next season. Definitely. Marie says, Sean, you hate everyone according to the chat. According to comments, I do. 1 week I love Verstappen, the next week I hate him. And I'm kind of indifferent with most drivers. People don't believe me. I don't know if you get the same, Dan, in your comment sections. People never believe me that I'm not really... I'm not a fan in the same sense as you look at the Dutch fans today and the British fans at Silverstone. I'm not a fan of a driver because I had all that with Schumacher and I can't be bothered to do it again. I like just sitting down and watching cars go fast. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, and when you've been a fan of a driver, it's especially for, I'm sure, how long it was Schumacher for you, Grosjean for me. You don't just drop them like that. It's not as soon as they lose a contract, well, I don't like you anymore. Like, it does stay for a little while as well. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts sometimes with the F1 fan base in the comment section. So, chat, you are lovely. Don't forget to drop a like.
Yeah. Well done, Dan. Yeah, I will if I see questions related to the race, I will read those out. Otherwise, I'll just answer any question for the next few minutes because why not, eh? Why not? We don't go live very often. Need to go live more often. Again, I know I said that last week. Soul Dry says, why do you hate Verstappen? I don't. But if I don't pick him for a win, then I hate him. And if I do pick him for a win, then I hate Hamilton. So, you know, I'll just hate all of them. I hate all 20 of them. Can't stand them. Want to waste my time with it. I am still rooting for Schumi, says Daniel. Absolutely. Keep fighting, Michael. Of course. I'm trying to find something race related, and then if not, I'll pick out the historic questions. Who likes Zandvoort added? Says Juiced or Used. Yeah. Again, atmosphere incredible. I think the track, the cars look amazing around there. Hopefully, with the cars next year, the racing will be better. But I think fairly successful. I think as a racetrack on the calendar, very good, very enjoyable. That's how I feel about Zandvoort. We'll see. We shall see next year. I think Dan's like me. I think we've already said it, haven't we? We're kind of like jury's out on next year. Some of the worst tracks we've ever seen. You know, Sochi tends to be pretty miserable. Apart from this year, Paul Ricard tends to be terrible. They could be the best races next year with these cars. We don't know. It's going to be... I'm looking forward to it. I cannot wait. Ziley says, as an Englishman, would you like to have Lewis get the 8th title? Not as an Englishman, but as a Schumacher fan, bear with me. Not necessarily this year, but I do want him to take an 8th title because I've always said Schumacher was such a hero of mine that if somebody's going to beat his records, I want them to do it properly. Whether that's Hamilton taking 8 or Verstappen taking 8, I don't know if he ever will. We'll see. Long way to go in his career yet. But if it's going to get beaten, I want it done properly because I don't want it to be sort of a half-assed thing, which that's really bad, doesn't it? Like, yeah, oh God, he only won 7 titles, did Hamilton? God, how half-assed is that? But you get what I mean. I want to see it get properly beaten if it has to be beaten. So, yeah, so not necessarily as an Englishman, but certainly as a Schumacher fan. And Schumacher always said that records were there to be beaten, so it's kind of fitting in that regard as well. And I hope somewhere, I think, again, I said last week, I hope somewhere Michael's able to watch Mick in that helmet this weekend, for example, and his career and watch this great season. Obviously, we don't know, but it would be... I hope he can. I'm sure he can somehow. Mick deserves an Alpha seat, says Prime number 19. Wish we had 2 races in the US, says Anne. Some question marks still around if Cota is getting 2 races. Also question marks if it's even getting 1 this year. So
don't forget Miami next year.
Oh, yeah, Miami's next year. So you've got 2 in the US next year. Everyone's very excited for that. They've named the stadium this week, haven't they? Which is the Miami... The initials are MIA, which I really hope isn't a bit of foreshadowing for the race, missing in action. But it's the Miami. I'm guessing Miami International Autodromo or something like that. But yeah, also obviously renaming Parabolica next week, which will always be Parabolica to me. But whatever. Bottas is going to give Max a massive toe in Sochi once again. Why would anyone be a Ralf Schumacher fan? Lol. I often get that one from family. Oh, why'd you support him? Why boycott? Oh, sorry, people are talking private conversations. Do you think Red Bull will have a really fast, low-wing setup like AlphaTauri does at Monza? If the sister team could do it, why not Red Bull? That's from Nutella. It's an interesting one, actually, Dan, because I don't know what you read before the weekend, but there was some reports saying that Mercedes felt like out of Monza and Zandvoort, they were going to be stronger at Zandvoort, but all the talk on TV and Red Bull and all of that seem to think that Monza will be more of a Mercedes track. So if it is, I think it was Verstappen that said that he's expecting them to have better top speed. So maybe Red Bull will have to run the ultra low downforce rear wing in order to keep up and keep them behind if they get ahead of them. So the whole season it's ebbed and flowed, hasn't it? One weekend, one strongest, the next weekend it's another.
Yeah, I'm not sure on this one, if I'm fully honest with you, because at certain races this year that need a bit more high speed, Bahrain, Silverstone, what else have we had this season? Austria as well, to a degree. Red Bull have been clearly the team to beat, but then likewise on the circuits that need a bit more downforce, your Monacos, your Bakus, although the back straights there on Baku, even this weekend Zandvoort, Red Bull again have been the team to beat. And it's kind of those in-betweeny ones where Red Bull struggle a little bit more and Mercedes come alive. But even on track that I've just mentioned there that appear to favour Red Bull, in the race, Mercedes have been right there. And sometimes in qualifying, Mercedes have been able to outdo Red Bull. Portugal is probably a track that needs a bit more straight speed than downforce, and Mercedes were brilliant there. That was probably their best track of the season so far. So I'm just waiting to see what happens. I've really got no idea which of them's going to be coming out on top. It's not traditionally been a great circuit for Red Bull. Even last season, Albon really struggled to get through the traffic, and Max had his own issues. I think was involved in contact maybe at turn one, and a few engine issues throughout it. And I think even when Seb Vettel was dominating, Ferrari did well, McLaren always did well there. So I don't know. I'm not convinced Red Bull are going to run away with it, but equally I'm not convinced Mercedes are going to be the favourites either. I think it's going to be a complete toss of the coin again, which, hey, that happens for every race this year. I'm certainly not complaining.
Mark wants to know why they're renaming Parabolica. They're renaming it in tribute or in honour of Michele Alboreto, and it's going to be called Curva Alboreto. With all due respect to Michele Alboreto, it'll always be Parabolica to me. So prepare for the preview when I inevitably call it that. But it is officially going to be called Curva Alboreto from now, really. So Suji says, hi, I've been following F1 since 1993. What about you, Sean? I've supported Senna, Hakkinen, Kimi, and now Leclerc. Never really liked Schumacher, sorry. Thank you very much for your contribution, mate. I've been watching since 92, so just the year before you. South Africa 92, which I think was the first race of the season. Nigel Mansell win, and I'm Schumacher through and through. But I've learned, and obviously Senna as well, for the brief period we got to watch him, obviously both of us. But over the years, I've learned to appreciate just how good Mika Hakkinen was. A driver who he was arch nemesis because he was Schumacher's rival, so I didn't like him. But as I've got older and you go back and watch things, you realise just how bloody good Mika Hakkinen was, really. So, yeah, absolutely. 92 for me, which makes me feel really old. It's not old. I know it isn't old, or someone will have a go. But, yeah, do you think F1 will ever return to the BBC? No, I think it's on Sky forever, and if Sky decides to drop it, we'll just get F1 TV over here, to be honest. I hope highlights stay on Channel 4 at least, Dan, so it needs to be free to air somewhere, doesn't it, for those who can't afford the subscriptions to Sky and F1 TV. Yeah,
definitely. Unless they go an extended highlights on YouTube or something like that, just any kind of free coverage is, for me, only going to be good for Formula One. I think we've discussed this many times. I think the vast majority of people in chat will agree. Having it behind a paywall, yes, it's great for Formula One's pockets, but for overall fan engagement and the sport itself, it's not healthy. So there needs to be some kind of free option.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to try and stream for a little bit longer, just to answer some more questions. So if you are starting to disappear, so if you are, thank you very much for coming along. But I want to stream a little bit longer because I feel it would be wholly inappropriate if this week's race reaction is shorter than last week's. So given that we had no race last week, so which always, now I'm sort of thinking, is there something important we've missed? But I think we covered all the important stuff. If there is, let us know. But we'll try and go for the next 10 or 15 minutes and then wrap things up. So please do pop chats in there. Well, that's a race related one. We sort of touched on it, but Jacques might have been later. Says, what's the thoughts on the fastest lap Merc drama? I tend to agree, actually. It was kind of a little bit unnecessary. But it seems kind of weird to me they pulled Bottas in because they wanted the gap for Hamilton to drop into when they could have just moved Bottas out of the way. They're saying it was precautionary, but that felt like a team order stop to me to get him out of the way. I don't know, but I might be completely wrong on that. But I think it was a little bit unnecessary because Hamilton had the point anyway. But like you touched on, I think earlier, Dan, or I said it, one of us did, they had Perez further down the order. So if Hamilton had that point, they could have brought Perez in with a lap to go and gone for it, couldn't they? So it was probably Mercedes covering that, really. But the damage limitation, it's actually one of the... I was quite sceptical about getting that point for fastest lap when it was first introduced, but that today is why it's there, and what makes it really interesting is that fastest lap point could decide a world championship. So again, we could look back to this race and say that fastest lap or a fastest lap won Hamilton, won Verstappen the world championship, so it was the right call. But it does feel like it was, because what was going on with Bottas's pit stop? That was the other thing in my notes. They held him for ages, Dan. Was that an issue maybe with the traffic lights? I would speculate probably more than Mercedes deliberately holding him, because Hamilton would have had a comfortable gap back to him.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on that, but I suppose just why you've mentioned it, we had the new pit stop regulations this weekend, didn't we? Because we didn't get to see them in Spa. And I don't think they were that bad. I don't think it really made much difference to the viewer, so that was ideal. But I don't know exactly why they held him. Maybe traffic to try and get clean air, but even that would seem strange. So I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, I just feel like it would be more of an issue with the sensors or whatever letting him go. I can't see they deliberately hold him, but it just seemed like really, because the tyres were all on and then he didn't go, and it just seemed really odd to me. But I don't know. But yeah, I think a lot of confusion over team radio, wasn't there, as well? Bottas kind of like, why can't I go for fastest lap? And then the famous Valtteri, it's James, stop it, basically was the line, if you want to call it that. Don't do it, we want you to back off. And he did back off. But I was wondering about the sectors when he was doing it. When he was told to back off in that final sector, he did, but I wonder if those fastest first two sectors were just cheeky little, I'm going for it. I don't know if Bottas operates like that. Is he a mind games guy, do you think, Dan? He doesn't feel like it, does he?
He doesn't, but then I just think of that episode of Drive to Survive in the latest season in
which
Sochi.
one?
Well, that's true. That is very true. But the race in Sochi where he supposedly deliberately qualified third, which gave him the win. But yeah, I'm not sure he quite operates like that. And for people questioning whether if he gets announced at Alpha or even just announced at leaving Mercedes, if he'll be a team player or not, I think he will. I think he's a very respectable driver. I think he's someone who will respect his contract until the end of the season. I don't think he's someone that wants to cause dramas, wants to cause upset. And I think you're right. I think Sector 1 and 2 was a little dig. Sector 3 was oh my God, I've gone too quick in Sector 1 and 2. I can't slow down enough. So I mentioned it earlier on. I think it's all a little bit over the top and unnecessary from Mercedes, but Hamilton got the point. They will very quickly brush that one under the rug, I think, today.
Yeah, because it's just the fact that they said, oh, box, Valtteri, but we're not going to go for fastest lap. So, okay, why? Could you imagine if he pulled in and we had a Monaco situation where the wheel didn't come off? I know that was like a really crazy situation and there's no guarantees that'll ever happen again, but there's also no guarantees it won't. And then all of a sudden that's third place gone and that's a mess. So it just seemed like a really silly, but then at the same time, if they want that point for the constructors and they want it for Hamilton for the championship, then they kind of had to go for it in case Red Bull tried to bring in a Perez, for example. And take it away, or even I was going to say even coax AlphaTauri to get Gasly out there on a set of softs, but he wasn't quite far enough clear of Leclerc. I don't know what say Red Bull have in that one. But interesting as well on such of my games that when it was put to Nico Rosberg by Jenson Button that he would have gone and set the fastest lap, Rosberg didn't give an answer. He said, well, you can't. And Button said, but you would have, or would you have, or something like that. And Rosberg was like, well, I don't want to compare my situation to Bottas's. And I was like, you so would. You so would have done it. I love having Rosberg and Button on the Sky stuff for the weekend. It's nice having people there that, we've said it before, great to have Martin Brundle there, great to have other drivers there like Johnny Herbert and Damon Hill, but Jenson Button, Nico Rosberg have driven these cars more recently, so it's kind of nice to get that more up-to-date information. Couple more questions. Kaylin, thank you very much for your contribution. Says, so who would you put your money on for the title? I mean, if I'm putting money on for the title, then I'm putting it on Bottas or Norris because I want the best return. As John T once said to me. I honestly, and it's not a cop-out, I honestly think it's too close to call. I think
that's a cop-out.
It's almost a flip, but it's almost a flip of a coin because you've got Verstappen and Red Bull quickest this weekend. Hamilton might be quicker next weekend with Mercedes, and they might be in Sochi. But then we might have a different situation the following race. It's just so hard to call. But Hamilton, just because it's what he's done for the last 6 years, it's like, well, of course he's going to win it. I think there is something to be said for experience in a title fight. Hamilton's done this before, Verstappen hasn't. And I think it could come down to that. It really, really could. It's going to be that close. So if I have to pick between them, I think Red Bull marginally have the better car, but I think Hamilton will nick it by 2.5 points. I hate that half point, by the way, but that's if you're forcing me for an answer. But my genuine answer is I don't know. It is the flip of a coin. Dan, you won't cop out because it's not your stream. You won't get the grief.
Well, I need to just clarify on something you've said there, because if Hamilton wins by 2.5 points, that means we've got another race stoppage somewhere along the line. So I want to know where that is.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. 2 points then. 3 points, whatever.
Oh.
It's just so pedantic tonight.
I think Verstappen, I've always said, and every year I've been here doing streams with you and ruining your channel, I've always said Hamilton, because like you've just mentioned, I think that experience is so crucial in a title fight, and Hamilton is king of the consistency. This year he's not quite been as consistent, and we've seen those little issues starting to sneak in. But I think the bigger thing for me is Max Verstappen winning today. I think today was a real landmark victory for Verstappen. I know it wasn't perfect with that lockup, but I think, and I've mentioned it twice already, and I'll say it again, I think there is something very, very special about winning in front of your home crowd in a race that's been built up for 3 or 4 years now, an event that's been advertised as Max Verstappen's race. The only reason we're going here is for Max Verstappen, and to soak up all that pressure, to have both Mercedes fighting you and to still come out on top with no mistakes, I think is a real coming of age drive. And I think Max Verstappen from the race today will be able to really push on for the rest of the season. Like you, I think he's going to be blooming close. I think one retirement or one penalty or anything, an engine failure or anything, 2016 is calling here, I think will really cost someone the title this year. I think, like you, 2, 5, anything like that points, it really will be so close. But Max Verstappen, for me, I think will just reach that extra level after this weekend.
Mark says, I beg your pardon. I don't know if that was aimed at me or you. So he disagrees with one of us. That's for sure. Thank you very much, Mark. And Jim, I hope Jim's joking. I'm sure he is. Says, just because you're a Brit. That doesn't hold water, because I'm a Brit who was a massive fanboy of Michael Schumacher and who supports a Belgian driver. So that whole bias thing doesn't wash. That's not, I'm sure there are channels out there that are, but I couldn't get. And again, I've said this a million times over the last. I said it when Vettel and Hamilton were going head to head. I don't give a toss who wins the championship. I just want to make sure that it goes down to Abu Dhabi. I don't care if Verstappen wins it, Hamilton wins it, or Bottas shocks us all and comes through and nicks it right at the end. I don't really, actually, I kind of wouldn't mind that from Bottas, if I'm being honest. What a story that would be. But I don't really care who wins the title, so long as it's close, we get some great racing along the way, and it's all wrapped up in Abu Dhabi. I don't want it done with 3, 4, 5 races to go, which I don't think it will be this year. Somebody would have to go on a hell of a run of bad luck, wouldn't they, out of those two, for this to be wrapped up with 4 or 5 races to go, let's be honest. But yes, couple more questions then, and then we'll wrap it up for today. We've almost gone past the the one from last week, which is it sounds so silly, but could you imagine the comments? Hang on a minute, how is this shorter than last week, so we actually had a race? I just hope the title won't be decided by crashes and luck. That's a fair point. Is that Hiron or Hiron? Thank you very much. Yeah. Actually, no, it will be decided by crashes and luck if you look through the whole of the season, because a lot of titles tend to be, they pivot on those things, don't they? So I suppose if you take every race into account, then you could argue that a lot of championships have been won on luck and crashes. But yeah, I get the point you're making. I'm not being pedantic. I'm not Dan, don't worry. Kaylee says, thank you for your answers. No, thank you very much for your contribution, mate. Chat, have had fun with that one as well. Most important, it will be fun, says Daniel. Completely agree. Malaysia is what won Rosberg the title, to be fair, says Max. I think he's having a conversation with somebody else. Crash, luck, or dirty games, as it should be. Hee. Someone wants some drama. And Sue says, how do you feel about the feeder series? I think the schedules are so bad, but there's been decent racing. Kind of annoys me to say this. I've barely watched anything of F2 and F3 this year. I think the F2 schedule is atrocious. I find it really hard to get invested because every time you get to a race weekend, you need a recap of what happened 4 months ago. And not only that, but F2 have got such a bad calendar of racetracks. I hope, and I was going to say, I'm sure you'll agree. I know you'll agree, Dan. I hope the rumours are true this week that they are next year going back to the old schedule for F2 and F3.
I think they're going to try and do the old format as well. Because
I hope so.
Three races in theory is lovely, but as you've just mentioned, when they're months apart, it becomes a bit silly. And to think we're in our Formula One calendar 13 races in now, over halfway, and Formula 2 is only 4 weekends in. It's a bit bizarre. I really don't get it. And Formula 3 not starting until, was it Silverstone or Austria? And then we've got loads in a row. It's just really, really messy. I like the idea that they went for this year with the support series being on a different race weekend so that we don't have F3, F2 and W series all on one weekend with F1. I think that's a good idea, but just space them out equally. You don't need to do F2 for 2 weekends and then, we'll do F3 for 8 and then F2. That's silly. It's not quite that extreme, but it's not far off. Yeah, I really hope they tone it down a little bit because like you, Formula 2, there's some great drivers, but even those drivers, in all fairness, they've still got over half a season to go and silly season's about to be wrapped up in a minute. What happens if a Robert Schwartzman wins the title and Alfa Romeo have already got their drivers? So all of that, it's just very, very bizarre for me. And yeah, I hope they change it as well.
You bang on there. And the reason they did it absolutely makes sense. To save money after what had been a really difficult year with the pandemic, it made total sense. But they just did it so badly. I'm not pretending. I am. I am going to pretend I could come up with a better F2 schedule than that because it's just shocking. And to give them all the, let's say, bad tracks. I don't mean bad tracks, but you get what I'm getting at. You know, the least popular ones on the calendar where we're likely to see less action and sticking them somewhere interesting. So it's Sochi, I think. Now they've rescheduled, haven't they? So I think we've got F3 and F2 for Sochi. So that's something. But that's 6 races. I don't like it, if I'm being honest. And I think we need to go back to what we had before. We'll see. Thank you to Emily, aka 83 Pink Punky. Says London Beer Fund for sure. Thank you very much. Massively appreciated. We will get down to London, and when we do, we'll come and meet you for a beer, Emily. That'll be awesome. Always nice to put. I was going to put faces to names, but I think that's your profile picture on Twitter. It doesn't matter. That was weird. Anyway, the F2 schedule is ridiculous. Nutella actually making a good point. He says, we know Russell is signed to Mercedes because Toto gave it away. The way he answered interview questions would make no sense if Bottas is re-signed, so he kind of gave it away officially. I don't know if you're referring to the same one, Nutella, but the one I saw either yesterday or Friday where he was talking about the open seat at Williams absolutely gave it away. I was like, Toto, he was, I haven't got the quote, but he was saying something. He was asked a question and it was about when will it be decided. And he said, we need to wait till this is sorted, that's sorted, the open seat at Williams, there's this, that, and the other around it. And as soon as he said open seat at Williams, I think you could see in his face, he realised what he'd done. And then there was a sort of, let's quickly gloss over that and move on to something else. But yeah, he definitely put his foot in it there, didn't he? So did you not see that, Dan? I thought you'd have been all over that.
I did, but what about Latifi? That's an open seat.
Oh, he's staying. Come on, he's staying.
He's staying because he's put in some great performances, but it's not signed yet. That's technically an open seat.
Well, no, but I think Latifi will be staying. And I know they don't need. He is putting in some good performances. He also brings money. I know Williams don't need money as urgently as they have in the past, but if Williams can have a good driver that's doing an all right job and some money as well, they're not going to say no, are they? So it's an interesting battle going on between Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. And if you'd have said to me at the start of the season that Horner and Wolff will be fighting over a Williams seat, I'd have been like, why? Why are they racing? What?
I need to ask you something, actually, the subject of that.
Go on.
How can Christian Horner be moaning that Toto Wolff is blocking a seat for Albon at Williams?
I know what you're getting at.
When Christian Horner's got 4 seats available to him.
Exactly, Dan. Absolutely spot on, mate. Absolutely. How badly do Red Bull manage their drivers that they're having to try and let another driver go? Because, we're desperate for Albon to have a seat. He deserves a seat in F1. You what?
Okay, I'm glad you're with me on this one.
You've got
because
4 seats, mate. If he deserves a seat,
Yeah.
put him in one of them.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you're with me on that because I thought, well, hang on, you got 4, mate. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad. I hope chat with us as well
No,
because
you're
there's a
spot
seat
on.
in Alpha Tauri as well. Like that's up for debate. If you think Albon's good enough, put him alongside Gasly and put Tsunoda out on a reserve driver for a year. I don't get it.
Exactly. And I would argue that there is more of a case for giving Albon another shot in that Alpha Tauri than there is for keeping Tsunoda next year at the moment. I think and that's not, I'm not attacking Tsunoda. I think he was promoted too soon. I said it when he got the seat. I felt it was too soon. Rapid driver, very good in F2, the surprise of the season in 2020, but it felt like it was too soon, and he struggled massively for good chunks of this season. And so if Red Bull are that adamant that Albon, in words that we've heard this weekend, deserves a seat in F1, then put him in that seat alongside Gasly and pop Tsunoda in a reserve role. He can go back to F2 as well because he's not won the championship, so he can go and, hone his skills a little bit more. I don't know. I like Tsunoda. I think he's a great personality. He's got some incredible raw speed and there's bags of potential there, but it just felt too soon for him. So if you're that sure that Albon's right for Formula One, why is he not in that Alpha Tauri alongside Gasly? Why was he not put in that car last year? You've wound me up now, Dan. You've set me off.
Sorry,
but it's
it wound
true.
me up. I needed to vent because I was thinking about it yesterday. I thought, well, this just makes no sense. I understand they've got 2 very quick drivers, 3 very quick drivers in F2, and Hauger's doing great in F3. So there is a bit of a time isn't on their side kind of vibe with Red Bull and their drivers at the moment. But at the same time, then if you have to be ruthless and get rid of them, don't then complain at other team principals and other teams that have young drivers. If Mercedes have got Nick de Vries and they've got Vesti coming through, they've made the decision to not have hundreds and hundreds of young drivers, and that's why it works for them. So, yeah, sorry, mate, I didn't mean to wind you up, but I just wanted to get it off my chest as well.
It's all right. And for the record, Mercedes are just as bad at managing their youngsters as Red Bull are. The Esteban Ocon thing, the Pascal Wehrlein thing. I mean, I think even Toto Wolff said when Ocon didn't get the seat at Renault for 2019, I think even he came out in the press and was like, oh, he deserves to be in F1. Well, you've got 2 seats and you have a third at Williams. I think, by the way, for the record, I think it was right to put Russell in that car in 2019. But I'm just saying, you've got seats available. Why? Whatever. If Albon deserves to be in F1, why are we fighting over a Williams seat? But I did other interesting quotes on that note, or speculation on that note, is that Toto Wolff has obviously said that he won't block Albon, but if Albon goes to Williams, then he has to leave the Red Bull program, has to get rid of those contracts. Talk that Mercedes might pick him up for their junior program. I love silly season, but it's getting ridiculous. It'll not be long before Mika Häkkinen is coming back from his sabbatical.
Raikkonen unretires for a second time.
Lucas says, how on earth are you guys still talking? Tell me about it. You guys, we'll talk for at least another hour after this about nothing. Mainly like slagging off Bottas. No, I'm joking. We're not that bad.
I'm glad you chose Bottas then, because that could have gone very, very bad with the choice of driver.
We still need to do that argument about Grosjean and Van Dorn that Aldas thinks we should do on a live stream. Maybe do that over the winter, which I think could be quite a bit of fun. I did see one more asking about Gio's race. Thoughts on Gio's race? I can't remember who it was now, so apologies. But I'll give it a quick shout because obviously it is race related. Braveheart. No, it wasn't Braveheart at all. Braveheart asked, where do we end up points-wise? +4 to Verstappen. Verstappen's now got a 3-point lead in the championship. So, 3 points, not 4, but yeah. But somebody just asked about thoughts on Gio's race. I think we pretty much covered it, didn't we, Dan? Did all right, had those couple of bits of contact, one into him into somebody else, and then a puncture kind of scuppered his race. But I think overall a good weekend. And if Alfa Romeo, I think the decision's already been made, but if they haven't made a decision and they genuinely want to see how he gets on over the next couple of weekends, that's not done him any harm, even though I think the decision's made. But he did all right, did Gio. And do you know what? That's Sean's quote for Giovinazzi's F1 career. He did all right, did Gio. Bless him. He's a good egg. Lauren also says Red Bull also have juniors like Yuri Vips. They've got Liam Lawson as well, haven't they? As well as Yuri Vips. So they've got, I think, very quickly, Dan, Yuri Vips, Liam Lawson, the next two to come through to F1, do you think? Not necessarily now, but the next two.
Yeah, I think so. I think Daruvula has got to have a pretty incredible end to the season if he wants to be within a shout. So I think Vips and Lawson are within a chance of the title. And then I mentioned him earlier, Dennis Hauger has been bossing F3. If he comes into F2 and does a job straight away, which some drivers have, Russell was rookie champion, Leclerc rookie champion as well. If Hauger can do that, he's in the mix as well. But I think, yeah, immediately with this year's F2 boys, Vips and Lawson doing a great job. Some of the best rookies, if not the best rookies in the field this year with Piastri. So, yeah, they're definitely the next ones coming through.
Yeah, it'll not be next year, but maybe 23 when contracts start to be up, you know, if Hamilton decides at the end, I mean, we'll have this conversation next 2 years, I'm sure. Hamilton decides to retire at the end of 23. I don't know if he will, but if he does, then that's going to shake up the market, because if Mercedes do get the regulations right and they're still up there as a front-running team, that's a seat that people are going to want. So it'll all get interesting in 23. I don't expect anything soon, but thank you for mentioning Piastri. I always forget to mention Piastri as an up-and-coming driver. Seems to get overlooked as well, but yeah. Mark, thank you very much. Last one for today says, does this mean the Netherlands officially has the best fans? Thank you very much, Mark, for your contribution. Thank you for all your super chats tonight. I think very quickly, Dan, based on this weekend, they certainly have the best atmosphere. And yeah, I think they have the best fans this weekend. It was brilliant.
You are a brave man.
Oh, no.
I think
I'm
next
backtracking.
weekend is
Monza,
going to be very telling.
Sorry, Mark. No. But they were incredible this weekend. Best atmosphere. But Ferrari fans at Monza, I think, would still trump it for me, but only because we've had so many years of that. Netherlands, in a decade's time, will probably have a completely different conversation. But if I'm still... Oh, God. I meant to say, if I'm still doing the channel in a decade's time, I was going to say if I'm still here in a decade's time. On that note, Dan, bloody hell. Thank you very much, mate. Apparently, I'll be dead in 10 years, so might as well make the most of this. Thank you for coming on. A pleasure as always. And next up, it's Monza. And then we get a week off, or F1 does, but I'll bloody miss it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. Not a bad little race today. I think a fun stream, plenty of carnage as always. So I'm sure we'll do this again in the future at some point. But yeah, the championship, well and truly on. That's what we love to see. And even though we didn't have the greatest fight in the midfield, Hamilton versus Verstappen, electric as always. So thanks for having me, dude.
No worries, mate. Thank you very much. And I'm sure I'll talk to you shortly.
Cheers, man. See you later, chat.
Thanks to Dan. Thank you to you guys as well for tuning in. Thanks for all your super chats. Massively appreciated, as always. And thanks for the interaction. I know the last half hour or so that stream was a good waffle, but not talked to you properly live since last Sunday. So always good to have a chat. Great race as well. Very good race. I enjoyed it. A lot of people won't. I really enjoyed it. And as Dan says, set us up beautifully for the World Championship and for next weekend in Monza. Yes, Monza. And then it's a week off and then on to Sochi and then a week off and on to Turkey at the minute. Something like that. So, yeah, calendar keeps shifting, but we'll try and keep on top of that one as always. So I will be back. I suspect I'll be back a lot next week with driver announcements. Obviously, the preview as well on Thursday. And then we'll be live with the race reaction next Sunday as well. Don't forget sprint qualifying next Saturday. So I'm sure many of you will get very, very excited about that one. Thank you to Sujis for the last minute super chat. So there I said it, AlphaTauri would have been better off in the standings with an Albon and Gasly lineup. I called it last year when Yuki was announced. Thank you very much for your contribution. Don't forget to drop a like before you disappear. We did get to 500 for Charles and Lee. We're getting towards 600, so a few more would always be a boost. So let's try and do that. And don't forget to subscribe as well and follow me over on social media. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.